So as an affiliate, being affiliated with the National Boys and Girls Club of America, what Steve and EJ are anticipating is that this could go national also as a great program and be introduced in other clubs and also be heard through other clubs. Success of the program, they're going to determine what the success of that program is through listenership, through social media contacts, those types of metrics. So we'll get an idea of where the listenership is. And we have contacts in the community, not only to expand that listenership. I'm hoping to work with the radio station to help provide some on-air support. I'm hoping to use the Boys and Girls Club to record public service announcements for us that go on the radio station. I think there's just a lot of innovative stuff that staff is excited about exploring with the Boys and Girls Club with this program. The startup cost for the program, we're figuring about $10,000. We're going to need to create and purchase equipment for this, computer for it, software, training, promotion, and marketing. To give you an idea, it's one of the lesser expensive programs that we've been doing. We did the Solar Cup program at the high school for years. That was kind of our way in. Then again, another great innovative program, but since COVID, that's kind of gone away. So we've been looking for this kind of niche program to add to our water use efficiency efforts. The club relies on donations. They're nonprofit. It's a great way for us to help get this initiative going by supporting this program with them. You may recall we do have funds available in our budget this year. I say it every time we bring up a program like this. These types of programs are funded through our Tier 2 rate. Remember our Tier 2 rate is anyone that uses water above the budget that's established for them. They're paying almost twice as much. Those funds that we collect from that extra amount that we're collecting for them being over budget goes and has to fund our conservation program. So we are using that money to basically convince the people that are using too much water to use less. This is a perfect opportunity to do that. In recognition of the district's funding commitment, the Boys and Girls Club has graciously offered to name the sound studio after the district. It's a nice feather in our cap, and it gives us the ability to, again, look at different ways to use that sound studio to provide more instruction. Again, having them record public service announcements for us, those types of things. Let's see. The item was presented to the district's Water Use Efficiency Committee, who supported it wholeheartedly. They think it's a great program and are, I think, just as excited as staff is to get this going. And they are recommending that that the commission approve the program and recommend that the board approve $10,000 expenditure for it. Yeah. Sorry.
Comments? Oh, you're done?
No, I'm not done.
Oh,
Mistake. The commission is going to approve this. It does not need to go to the board. It will go to the board as an information item.
commission only, because it's 10,000.
Because it's $10,000. I was confusing it with another item. Yes, so if the commission approves, it goes forward and bring it to the board at their September meeting to let them know that we're doing this. But again, we think it's a worthwhile program. I don't know if Steve or EJ, whether you want to add any comments or if there's anything you want to say. If not, that's fine also.
Hi, my name is Piper Johnson. Very grateful to have this opportunity. I'm here to the beach right before middle school, and before living here, I lived in Florida, and I wasn't very well versed in the value of living sustainably and conserving water. And now that I've moved here, I'm very grateful to live in America's #1 most water-wise city. And it's really just changed the way that I live my life and how I think about how I'm using water. When I'm brushing my teeth and when I'm taking a shower, I decided to get out early to conserve water. And I think our podcast would really help teenagers think the same way. And I know you mentioned that it's hard to reach that audience. Teenagers don't like to listen to a lot of people. So I think that coming from other teenagers, they would be more inclined to listen and really take that as a value in their own life. And yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
We found our host for the podcast.
Yes.
Exactly. Great.
All right. Comments from the commission?
The only thing that I'm on that committee and I think it's incredible. I think it's a wonderful idea and I'm so glad that you guys have put this forward to us for consideration. And the only thing I'd like to add is that 10,000 plus a plaque. I think we should have a plaque. I think we should have a little plaque on the studio. And I think that this is going to really, I think you guys are going to set huge precedents throughout the county and beyond. So I think it's wonderful. So I fully support this venture.
Awesome. I have one question. Who amongst you is going to write the podcast? Does everybody agree?
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
I would like to note with that, part of it will be written and the other part will be interview format. So it provides through interview.
How often you guys like air?
We're home for an episode a month. We're gonna shoot for 2 episodes per month. But at least. And this will go through January.
Yeah, I'm kind of ignorant. And so how do people like kind of know to go to your podcast?
Through the clubs. We send out information regularly to over 1,000 families in the Green Beach community and neighboring communities. That would be the first step of it. Then the second step would be sending out through the BGCA system.
That makes sense.
As well as Christopher mentioned, a partnership with the local radio stations. We'll have them posting that advertisements.
I think it sounds awesome. Anything with the BS, yeah, but nice you guys to sit here too.
Are looking.
Thanks.
Mark, and thoughts?
save it.
Save it.
More important.
I said one. What is the plan for? You're obviously all very motivated. What is the plan for success? How are you going to recruit people? And if you have a plan, I don't know what the specific is, but you need a plan for that because you're all enthusiastic. It doesn't mean there's anybody.
Well, I think we come from a lot of communities. We don't just go to Laguna Beach High School, but
Okay.
we have someone that's homeschooled and we have someone that goes to high school at Irvine. So very much establishing that in our school communities as well and getting younger people involved with the podcast. So that once we graduate and once we move out of Laguna Beach, other people can still continue that podcast and kind of have us as the people to ask questions too. So that we can continue this podcast.
No, I'm just recommending that in your establishment of your management principles or whatever the heck it is, that you have a clear plan of, just like you mentioned, variety of schools, variety of ages, keeping new people into leadership positions so that it's a continuing thing. I don't want to spend $10,000 and then in 2 years it's all gone. It's pretty run.
Sorry, I have an idea of bringing the club to my own school because at my school, club, it is a very long registration process and I missed the deadline. But there's another registration in the spring. So I have the opportunity to bring in and move members through my school as well.
Great. It is valid. I just want to be very clear that it's an important function because the enthusiasm you have has to be translated to the next or transferred to the next group. So any other questions, comments?
I will comment on that as well and say that the port, we do have an official partnership with Green Beach High School. So we have a presence on campus weekly. I believe we're there 3 days of the week. But we're there every day of the week. And we will be advertising and hopefully establish a formal podcasting club.
Yeah, that'd be great.
we're gonna provide so much interesting information to them. They're gonna they're just gonna want to keep doing it. They're gonna be doing 3 a week or 3 a week.
I'm just gonna wait till it becomes a YouTube channel.
There we go. Big time, consider.
So building conference as well. And I will mention, I set the January date, however, that's just a plan to see how things go. We anticipate extending it indefinitely.
Is there a motion? Any other comment? One more
Can I
comment.
ask you a comment?
Yeah.
Especially if podcast takes off and really reaches a lot of families around Laguna Beach, then obviously right now with the social media age, a lot of people are gonna want to be involved, especially if we do have a big impact, and we do project to have a big impact. So I believe that a lot of younger kids are gonna want to be involved, just because of how much impact will be.
Become famous influencers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants.
Cool, they'll be
So
influencers.
you make your first $1 million.
Sounds great.
Fair enough.
Well, with that, I'll make a motion.
Make it-
Second.
Yeah,
Public comment.
public comment. Is there any? public comment? There is motion now. Is there a second? Walter,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can.
So we will not be insulted if you guys want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to stay, but it doesn't get any more interesting than that.
Okay. Go back to now, item 4.4.
4.5, because I think you swapped them unless you want to do 4.4 now.
That would be,
We switched 9 and
that
4.
would be the night.
Yeah, so I mean, I wowould prefer to keep going to the next item because I do have 2 consultants and then we can come.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
4.5.
Can we do that?
Yeah, I think you guys.
You swapped it.
Instead of putting 4.9 above 4.4, you switched. That was the motion, was 4.4 is taking 4.9, so now. We'll do 4.5, 4.6, 4.6.
Okay, so 4.4 will come in 4.9.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay. 4.5,
Thank you, Chair.
I'm not sure.
Chair for the evening. So the district has been working with Scale Microgrid Solutions for several months. I actually have 2 gentlemen from Scale Microgrids on the Zoom call tonight. We have Tim McDuffie, who's their business development manager, and Shay Hughes, who's their director of business development. And we'll hear from them in a second, but maybe just a quick intro and what brought us here tonight. So again, we've been working with them over the last several months to identify an energy project that would increase the district's use of renewable energy, reduce our energy costs, and also alleviate our dependence on fossil fuels during a power outage. So the first step was really working on a conceptual project. We started looking at our El Moro Reservoir site, and then we looked at bundling it with some other sites till we finally got to what we believed was a project that penciled. And really is now set us up for what is the next step in the process. And the next step would include entering into a memorandum of understanding between the district and Scale that would then enable them to take those next steps to look at some of the funding for the project. So the self-generation incentive program. It also sets it up to that because they will be investing significant time and actually some capital into this next phase, that if this does continue to the next phase, which we would then enter into yet another agreement, we would offer some exclusivity as a result of this first step to say, if we do move on, you will be our partner when we go to that next phase, because they are investing all this time. It just makes sense that we wouldn't expose them to being substituted at the last minute for somebody else. But with that, I asked Tim if he would do a kind of a quick overview of the project we're looking at, and to be available if you guys have any questions. But the recommendation that we're looking for tonight is that the commission recommend that the board authorize the general manager to enter in this memorandum of understanding. And so with that, I think we do have the presentation, Andrea, if we can pull that up. And Tim, are you able to hear us? And
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Yeah, that was that's a really cool thing I think y'all are doing for the Boys and Girls Club for what it's worth. It's interesting to see it all kind of play out or listen to it all play out. But anyways, yep, I can see the screen share here, so should be good to go. Go over this, really high level, and then I'm absolutely happy to dive into the details of anything else, that comes up. My background is electrical engineering. I'm licensed electrical engineer in the state of California, also in Florida. And I've asked Shay Hughes, who is actually my supervisor, to come on because he has done a lot more of the S-chip applications, and that's the self-generation incentive program. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But he's been through the process much more than I have. So if there were specific questions on that, or any of our other previous projects that we've done with water districts, then we would talk through that as well. So we could go to the next slide. So a little bit of background, Keith had mentioned, that we were originally looking at the El Moro facility, and mostly because of the roof space that was available. Also, there was a high energy usage that was associated with it too. And we looked at that, and we realized very, very quickly, and that the amount of energy efficiency at each one of these facilities, including El Moro, and then spreading out to some of the other ones, we realized very quickly that trying to do something to take some alleviate energy usage was probably not going to make sense financially, primarily because you're pumping during off-peak hours and being very efficient with the way you do it. So all of that to say, usually when we go to a water district, it's very straightforward. This really was a challenge because you're so efficient with the way you're using your energy. So yeah, kudos to y'all. But we did figure out, we were able to find a way to pull together a project that we think makes pretty good sense. So with that in mind, the three main guiding principles that we were, in our consultations with Keith and his team, was to increase the use of renewable energy, reduce energy cost, obviously make sure that the project pencils, and then also alleviate dependence on fossil fuel during a power outage. Especially with the price of diesel, who knows where it's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Sun's hopefully going to be here. So if you're able to charge batteries and keep things going, then obviously it provides some resiliency that you otherwise wouldn't have. So with that in mind, we looked at all of the facilities that are run, and I can't remember the total quantity, but there was a lot of electric bills that we had to kind of pour over, and we picked out these 5 as sort of the most efficient ones, or we think that have the best ROI, and create a situation where we think we can fund a project that would meet these goals, and then also be something that be highly visible and another feather in the cap of your district, because now there's once you do this, there's not a lot of other places to put solar. It's taking advantage of a lot of available space. So next slide. There we go. So skipping straight to the financial overview, right? So this is where we typically start. We try to find a project that meets, or we've tried to identify a project across all 5 of these sites that meets all of the goals that we talked about originally. So the top 3 in order of importance: goal 1, increase renewable energy. We were able to get to 66% renewable energy across all 5 of those sites. So it's pretty, 2/3 is a pretty good chunk. And then the other part of it too was cash flow, trying to find projects, or trying to create a portfolio of projects that pencil. And so based on the energy savings, some avoided operational expenditures that you would have on your generators, including diesel fuel costs and some other things we'll talk about in a second, we're projecting a savings of $33,000 in year 1. With $0 out of pocket. So we're not asking for any CapEx whatsoever. This would just be operational savings. So again, try to make it as expedient as possible and try to create the best, best scenario that we possibly can. And then the other part, alleviate dependence on fossil fuel during an outage. So what we have here is using the battery storage that we're proposing in addition to the solar arrays that would be on top of the tanks. It would be for 340 days out of the year, you would have more than 12 hours of energy resiliency. So that means that if you have an outage of say 6 hours, there's a very, very good chance that you're not going to burn any fossil fuels in order to cover that. And in the past, it would be, hey, let's fire up the generator, wait a few seconds or wait a minute or however long it takes to get it going, burn diesel, decrease the life of the generator, all these different things. With what we're proposing, the battery would do that. And again, you'd be powering yourself through this outage using renewable energy. So the other thing to consider here is that there's a cumulative savings over the life of the system, because what we're proposing is essentially a power purchase agreement. And the cumulative savings that we're looking at over the 25-year lifespan of the agreement, again, if we get to that point, which we hope we will, is $2.2 million, a little more than $2.2 million bucks. Go down to the next slide. So some of the things, again, we wanted to highlight some of the key assumptions that we have here. So we've got some avoided generator operational savings. The idea would be to, in these areas on these 5 sites, utilize the batteries so that you wouldn't have to utilize your generators. I'm not sure what the existing maintenance contracts are. I'm not sure what you're paying for fuel, but this is sort of indicative considering the price of diesel fuel over the next 20 years, which who really knows where it's going to go, could go up. I'm assuming it's probably going to go up or continue to go up. So it pulls you away from that, and there's a value associated to it. And, that's something that we wanted to make sure that was highlighted in some of the financials here. So, and again, as Keith mentioned earlier, a lot of this is predicated on incentives. So in the next slide, I'll talk about some of the, how do we make this work? How are we able to do something that saves you money and doesn't cost anything, which almost sounds, it almost sounds too good to be true, but it's very, very common. We've done it in a number of different water districts and public agencies. So we do this through a combination of the federal ITC, which is the investment tax credit, which covers 40% of a number of the different devices, batteries, solar panels, things that go into developing the actual project itself. The other thing I'd point out is that you're in a sort of a unique category in that you are a designated energy community, which means that you get an additional 10%. So it was originally 30%. Based on legislation that was passed a few years ago, but because you're in Orange County, that's an additional 10% that goes on top of that. So makes it a little bit easier to help the project pencil. And then the last bit would be the self-generation incentive program, otherwise known as SGIP. And SGIP is a state incentive program that's focused on providing energy resiliency in areas that are fire prone, and then also served low income communities, which Laguna Beach City qualifies for. And then the last bit is California Chapter 42, 1713, which is if you have an energy efficiency project like this that is saving money right out of the gates, isn't costing anything, then there's an expedited path that you could take to deploying these systems so that you don't have to go through an RFP process if you don't want to. And again, we've seen that used successfully, and we wanted to just kind of highlight that everybody's got to make their own decision on what the right path forward is, but wanted to put it out there as well. Go to the next slide, please. So again, this is what I was speaking to earlier. This is the actual state and the federal incentive pieces in a little bit more detail. So the energy resilience rebate is 100% of the cost of the energy storage system by itself, which is the battery. In this case, they're Tesla batteries. Actually, I think some of them are Teslas, and I think there's a mix of Teslas and SunGrows. But yeah, so 100% of the cost of the battery, and then also the investment tax credit as well, 30% plus the 10% bonus. So again, just a little bit more detail on the different things that are kind of making it possible. You go on next slide. So again, looking at the two main qualifiers for the equity resilience program, you've got to be in a high fire threat district and then also in a low income community. There's two maps that you have to check when you're doing this. And so we checked each one of the sites. Each one is either in a tier 2 or a tier 3 fire district. And they both combined, the district serves this low income community, so it qualifies for this SCHIP funding. Next slide. And then the last piece is scale financing. And this is sort of where we start to look for things that will, this is where we want to enter into the memorandum of understanding so that we can feel comfortable sort of, providing the additional piece. So you've got the two pieces, you've got the state and the federal funding mechanisms, incentive programs that are available. And then we self-finance the balance. So we look at it, sometimes we call it gap funding, but at the end of the day, it allows us to take the operational risk of the system over 25 years, avoid any capital expenditure on your part, and then again, provide some significant savings both right out of the gates and then also over the life of the system. Next slide. And then again, this is more of a reference. I'm not going to go over all these, but this is just to show other places. Santa Margarita Water District, which is a project we recently, or actually we're going into construction very soon. Actually, Shay probably knows better than I definitely knows better than I do, but I'm pretty sure it's starting construction very soon. But it went through the exact same process, went through the SCHIP process, went through everything, very, very similar. And then same thing with the Port of San Diego microgrid project that was approved about a year ago, I want to say. And then also Petaluma Schools, which is another one of our projects. At public agency went through the same process. And then also LA County Schools. This is a little bit of an older reference, but it just shows that it applies to counties, cities, chartered cities, any sort of public agency that's out there. And then next slide, I think that should be the end. All right. So I feel like I've been talking an awful lot. I apologize. There's a lot, but at the end of the day, what we're asking for, right, and what we're hoping to do is to reserve a spot in the SCHIP program. And that requires us to put in a little bit of effort, actually not insignificant amount of effort to make the reservation, to do the due diligence, to do some of the things that are required to reserve a spot in the program. And then also in addition to that, put down a upfront deposit, which again, we take that risk on. There's no risk to the account or to the agency at this point. It's just, or to the district, I should say. It's just a matter of, again, feeling comfortable that hopefully once the project goes through these different processes, SCHIP reservation is reserved, then we're able to move on to the project and just get it deployed as quickly as possible and start, recognizing some of the savings that we talked about. So, Keith, anything else you think we should add at this point, or any questions, anything I can help out with?
I think maybe it's time to maybe turn it over to the commission. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Absolutely.
Any questions to start? Okay.
I have a few questions. So in your presentation, so in layman's terms, so you put up the solar panels and you have batteries and you're storing energy, and then we are going to be using it only for emergency, or is this going to power our entire district 24/7 with our large
No.
pump stations and whatnot?
Not the entire.
No, well, so it's going to be two functions. So you're going to have a situation where you're tied to the grid. And when you're tied to the grid, it's going to be offsetting load before it gets to your meter or before it gets to the meter. And then also, there will be energy that will be used during an outage. So you've got grid tied where essentially you're doing rate arbitrage, which is where you're trying to essentially get the most out of your solar or your stored energy as possible. And then when it goes into an islanded mode, that's when it's going to be disconnected from the grid, and that's when it's going to be providing backup power. So it's going to be active 24/7, either in an islanded scenario where it's providing power to these 5 sites, or when it's connected to the grid, again, trying to get as much financial optimization out of it as possible.
Okay, so then my question, I guess, is then, so when we're not using it, then it's going back into, so there's excess energy is what you're saying, and that goes into the grid. So
Correct.
who owns the dollar value of that energy? And what is that estimated to be?
Right. So the estimated energy savings are shown for each site at the or on the financial table that I was showing earlier. So the actual savings on your energy bills or your SDG&E bills is it SDG&E or SCE? I can't remember. But the energy savings that you're realizing, no, it's SCE. That's right. Sorry. The energy savings that you're realizing would be realized by the district.
No, I know the energy savings, but I guess what I'm saying is you as a company,
Right.
You are investing in this, so there has
Correct.
to be some payback for you. So you're realizing that value of the energy when we're not using it, correct?
No, so the way we get
Or
compensated for the right, so the way that we get compensated for the project is through a microgrid services agreement. And so it's like any other services agreement that you have with any other company. And that's again illustrated on the table. So if you think about it in terms of you have energy savings on one hand, and then you've got our agreement on the other, what we're showing as the savings is the difference between our annual fee and what you're going to be saving in energy, and then OpEx on top of that.
So in other words, we create the grid and the batteries, and that energy is sold back to the grid.
Correct.
And then the difference, that delta, is what we're realizing. So how much is our service agreement then? Is that there? I'm not.
Yeah, so just,
I'm trying to figure.
so that's kind of the next phase. So,
Oh.
we have not negotiated what the MSA would be, what those
Oh.
fees are, all of that.
I see.
That comes after this phase. So if this goes forward and everything's great and, both sides like where this is heading,
Mhm.
then we would negotiate and come back with that MSA for. But at this point, we are just entering into the phase of really getting to the next level of getting the funding, putting more effort in to get us to a point to see if we would get to an MSA.
I see. So,
Yep.
so when we say that $2 million or whatever,
That's not really part of what we're doing now. That's looking at the project
as in,
as a whole. When we do get to that point, that's what we would expect. But the value in there, I guess there's an assumption of what our fees would be, I would imagine.
that's
Number.
Exactly.
what I'm trying to ask.
But we haven't actually agreed upon that in an agreement yet. That's not even what's on the table. today.
I understand, but I guess, okay, so that was, okay,
If I could follow on that.
yeah.
I've done these before myself. So isn't part of the financial realization that you get is part of the tax credits, part of the incentives, part of the energy value that gets put back in the grid, whatever that savings is, goes to how you recoup your cost.
Exactly. And that's how we're able to offer it with no upfront capital from the district. And it's also how, we're able to allow these different tax mechanisms to be realized by public agencies.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so they,
Right,
they
because they're
use,
only
they
for
use
public
these on our
agencies.
behalf,
Right.
and that's where they get their.
That's where they get theirs. So if we were to, just as a hypothetical,
Sure.
so that delta is 28%. So if we were to fund that 28% upfront and then realize, that upside, once our investment's paid for, what would that look like?
And we'd be financing it.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, you essentially have to cover the gap on your own, and then there's some other pieces of it, that go onto it as well. There's also the long-term maintenance of the equipment, an operation and maintenance agreement that you'd probably need to enter into with a local contractor. But yeah, long term.
Or with you, or, some sort of deal like that. I guess if that's something that we should take a look at, because I'm just thinking, as energy costs increase, and I'm sure that's why you're in this business, over the next 25
course.
years, energy is going to increase, and so that value is going to increase, even though, what you've put into it initially should last 25 years. There's going to be some point where you're going to be profitable, or very profitable. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this business. And I guess I'm
Right.
just trying to figure out. So if we were to look at plan B and actually put our money up and financed it ourselves, because we have such a great rating, then, is there do you have any kind of a program where it would be like a shared, shared?
Well, yeah, that would,
thing?
so that would be more of a, a capital expenditure, and where we would essentially be a design build firm. You could come in, design the systems, turn
Right.
them over, and
Or design build operate, have a design build operate contract.
well,
And-
yeah, right. There's the operational portion of it too. I guess for us, there's a few things to consider, right? There's pros and cons to it. So with this scenario, we own the systems, we operate them, and we guarantee the production and everything over the life of the systems, whether 20, 25 years, whatever the final contract term ends up being. That includes if the inverters fail, if the battery fails, there's a battery replacement that's built into our costs, because we know that they're going to run out of warranty, and we want to make sure that it's there to cover it. This is a full turnkey thing that is our interests in this sort of arrangement are aligned with yours, because we offer a performance contract, and if it doesn't meet the terms of that contract, then we're on the hook for it. The other side of it, the other way to do it would be, like you said, design and build and turn it over to you. And then again, you would have long-term O&M. It's a little bit different, because then if something breaks, you got to fix it. and you are operating systems, you're operating assets, and it's something that, again, we do on a daily basis. And the way that it's structured now is really sort of mutually beneficial. So the pro is that you just have to manage a contract for the next 25 years. If it gets to that stage, again, as Keith mentioned, we're still just trying to get through the some of the state incentive applications. The con is that you don't actually own the system. So it's, again, pros and cons.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm getting to. I'd like to take a look at what it would look like if we owned it and actually outsourced even the operations, the design, build, and operations piece of it, and then own that and own the energy as well. So anyway, those are my questions.
Keith, are you gonna?
Well, I was actually gonna just ask Scale if anything that Commissioner Neve had mentioned is inconsistent with how you might see this going forward. When I look at this, it's a two-step process, and the next step informs what we're going to do when we get to some of the discussion items today. But let's just say we get through this next step, everything looks good, and I flesh out different options. Is anything that's been mentioned today something that you think would not be something we could consider? And in the end, maybe it does just point to what we started with, but I'd like to be able to offer those options.
Well, at the end of the day, again, what we're looking for is the approval to apply for the state incentives. And I think one way or another, you're going to need those state incentives to make it pencil, whether you own it or whether we own it. There's also a hybrid solution that we can offer, which is a buyout. Usually it's 5, 10, some discrete number of years where we own and operate the system, and then we can sell it back to the system or sell it back to the district if that is something you're interested in as well. But one way or another, our SCHIP reservation for these funds is something that is the next step. And then once it comes time to negotiate the contract, I'm totally fine with running the numbers and the math on the option that she'd mentioned earlier, and saying what would it look like if the district actually owned it and wanted to essentially have that sort of comparison. But either way, the SCHIP funding and the reservation that we're asking for through the MOU is the next step. But nothing.
What's the total value of power that this system is going to generate each year?
The total value of power that the system is going to generate. So the way we have it right now, shown on the financial table, is a conglomerate of each of the operational savings in addition to the value of the energy that it's going to produce. So if you look at the table again, down on the right above where we talk about year one positive cash flow, you can see where there's the utility savings with the avoided operational savings. So the value of that energy is baked into that.
What's the total? I couldn't.
That's
I was
the
wondering.
355.
How much
Yeah,
power? Yeah.
355, 675, but that does have, again, operational savings baked into it as well.
So minus
Meaning the diesel fuel cost, maintenance, that sort of thing.
Replacement of equipment and stuff.
Yeah, so what is it without all that?
I can get you those numbers offhand. I mean, the simple math to do would be to take that year one avoided savings, subtract the key assumption numbers per generator OPEX on the next page, and then that would get you an idea of what the actual dollar amount savings is, or just energy and programs.
If I read this table, basically you have 1 million kilowatt hours that's going to be produced. Is that in the ballpark?
Correct.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Dear.
Well, and again, I think just to kind of put it in the context of the steps, I mean, what you're talking about and the details of the financials and whatnot, this is really, before we enter into any MSA, we're gonna need to know this ins and out and actually show that it all pencils and know what our funding looks like. And this is really kind of an overall preview just to say, based on these conceptual projects we've looked at today, it's at least enough that we can say it's worth going further and looking at what funding's available. But certainly the questions and the details about like, okay, before we really commit to something of this size, it will be a lot more coming forth when we get to that MSA, a lot more detail, a lot more due diligence on all of this. We could look at options and everything else and just kind of say, okay, here's the recommendation from staff and here's everything you need to know, including, really getting into the details of the finances and what it's going to cost to make sure it works with engineering and operations and all of that other stuff. So again, this is really just to show from a conceptual standpoint, when we've started this and over the last several months, we have something that looks like it'll work. And this is what the numbers look like. And so I think your questions are really good questions, but I just don't want to give the illusion that the decision today is to commit to this. That's when we get to this next phase. Yes.
But having said that, it looks to me like this, if we enter into the MOU, then the only way to terminate that would be for cause. And if we just don't agree with what the numbers, then that's not really cause. I guess that's a legal.
The MOU doesn't go into this next phase. It's only to get us to the point of getting to this SCHIP. And that if we are to move to the next phase, it reserves that we won't substitute somebody else for them. but it doesn't commit us to go to that next phase. At that point, we have the opportunity then to discuss what the next phase is, which is that MSA. So it just gets us to that point where we're then at the table going, okay, now based on what we did with this MOU to get the SGIP and identify the funding and go a little bit further, let's sit down and talk about how we're going to do this. Are you guys gonna do a turnkey? Are we going to finance part of it? You know, those are things we can look at. What is the fee they're charging? Those are all negotiated items. I think the one thing that we can't do based on the MOU is go, thank you for finding all this funding. Now let's go to somebody else to carry it through to the MSA part. That's the only part that's really restricted.
I understand that, but the funding's pretty transparent. I mean, it's kind of out there. The funding's out there, you know, and I think that once they say, I mean, as soon as we sign that, then they can go and get financing like that as well. So I think that that's a great incentive for scale. And I think that that's right. But I guess we're kind of stuck into the negotiation, not a comparative negotiation. And I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, at least for purposes of termination, and then is even a provision. I know that the staff report referenced that it would be for cause, but I mean, that hasn't been defined and what constitutes for cause and what the other terms are. So, I mean, in terms of opining on that, that'll be a part of the negotiation once it gets to the MOU and whatever other agreements are necessary. So as of right now, I wouldn't even.
So tonight is not signing an MOU.
Well, let me just say the recommendation is that the commission would recommend that the board sign the MOU. The language for the MOU, we've been working with legal counsel on. If there's a recommendation that the commission would like to see us carry into that negotiation, that's something that we can work with legal counsel and scale on. Say this was the recommendation that the commission asked for. Sorry, as far as what's in that MOU.
That I think that. I'm sorry, Mark.
I'm sorry, don't finish.
No, I thank you for the clarification. That's all I was going to say. What are you going to say?
Yeah, so I have a few questions. Have you evaluated whether I don't know how this is proposed to be supported on the roofs of these reservoirs? Have you evaluated that the roofs can structurally sustain the weight of the solar panels and what that looks like? Or is there any additional reinforcement or any additional structural component that has to be put into that?
And that's part of our due diligence. So the first step, if the district decides to sign the MOU, is to have a structural engineer come out with us and to assess that. At this stage, it's hard to commit to that level of engagement with engineers or with engineering without something that kind of, again, grants us some level of exclusivity. So short answer is we haven't done that, but that is part of the steps before we sign any sort of formalized contract, is to get out and do that very assessment.
So if you did that assessment and it came back that some significant structural reinforcement is going to have to happen, that would obviously eat into the savings, which would make
correct.
Which would make obviously your cost and our cost differential be a lot smaller.
Totally, and that's why it's not binding, and that's why the whole if we get to that point, I mean, look, if we sign the MOU, we obviously want to do the project. But if for whatever reason, like you said, there's some structural components of it, there's some unforeseen thing that, we walk into and we say, look, if you still want to do the project, we have to increase our fee to X because we realize this, that, and the other during our due diligence, then it's a decision that you can make and decide to not do one or all of the projects. And that's, again, it's something that just gives us some cover so that we can do that due diligence, apply for some of these funds, and be ready to support you if it makes sense, if it still makes sense for both parties after we do all of that.
And then kind of to follow on that, whatever would turn out, you could put them on top, they can hold it up, or you have to do some structural reinforcement, whatever it is. So at the end of the 25-year life, if the district went forward with this, and if the district decided to go with you doing the full operation and owning it the way you're proposing, and at the end of the 20 or 25-year useful life, I'm assuming that that means that the district now owns it all. And so all of the replacement then has, these things don't last forever. So then
Right.
how does that work into the replacement value? 25 years, you guys have done it. This is the life of the project. Now the district owns all these facilities. And if you don't replace the solar panels and things like that, we're not going to appreciate the same savings. So how that to me seems like a cost that goes up. So explain how that works.
Yeah, Shay, do you want to talk about that? He's a little bit more, yeah, go for it.
Sure, I can jump in here. Good evening, everyone. So at the end of the term, there's a few options. There is an option for extension on 5-year increments, or the standard would be that we are, to come in and remove the system at our cost. So we wouldn't be leaving you with a system that isn't working anymore that you have to get rid of. We're also not, modeling in savings after 25 years to the system either, right? So there's that option for us to remove it, which is the standard option. Or if there is, mutually agreeable, if we want to extend and we think there's still life in the components, or we can, spend a little bit to extend the life of the components, then we can go down that path as well.
Okay, thank you for that. There was some discussion about the termination aspect of it. So whatever that, if this moves forward from tonight to the board for an MOU, I would think that the termination I would want to see that if they go through their analysis and apply for all these funds and do the financial stuff, and we get to the end, and even if it looks like this, we're like, no, I don't know, I don't think so. That my understanding is we don't owe them a thing. Is that correct? Can I clarify that? So you go through all this analysis, you present this.
Yep.
It all looks the way it is. Maybe everybody says, well, it looks good, but you know what? Either for that reason or structural reason or the 25, whatever it is, like, thanks for all your work, but now we're not interested. You walk away and we owe you nothing, correct?
That's correct. It's a bit different with public agencies than in the private sector. This would probably have a $50,000 or $60,000 price tag kind of breakage associated with it. But we do take on a little bit more risk working with the public sector, and there's no fee associated with it. Yeah.
I don't know if that's explicit in what would be moving forward, but I think it should be. And then just a final question that's kind of dovetails on that, and I guess it's more to you, Keith, and you and staff. So in my career, I've done these kinds of projects, and when I've done these kinds of projects, and you guys do, I've not necessarily heard of you guys, but I've worked with several other vendors that are similar to you and how you do these kinds of projects, 4217s. I had done it where I'd send out an RFP to three or four companies to do the same, and then they all propose different ways of coming to the same model you do. Most of them have, some of them had, we'll do all this for you, and if you terminate with us, then there'll be a fee. Or one of them will take a risk like you're doing and saying, we'll do it this way and we're not going to charge you. And that all becomes part of the evaluation of firm that you select. So I'm just want to have the conversation as to how did you get to them? And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. I totally know this. I'm just wondering how we got to them without kind of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So actually, it didn't start with Scale. It actually started with another firm, Resco, that we had brought in, and we looked at a bunch of sites from a PV standpoint, and they narrowed it down to a few different sites, but nothing that really looked very promising. And then we were introduced to Scale because they were working on a project for Santa Margarita, which included actually microgrid solution added to it. And based on what they had said they're doing there, it appeared to be that they could pick up the ball and run with it. And they were familiar with the area. They were working with the water district. So we thought that was a good next step to keep the ball rolling. And that's how we got engaged with them.
Okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I just was wondering how the different ways to go about it. But yeah, so those are largely my questions. So those are things that I want to make sure that we consider. The
off ramp, basically, the no obligation off ramp after
no obligation off ramp, and as we go into this analysis,
let's make sure that it's communicated that what looks okay now is based upon the assumption that there's not going to be a lot of cost. They're basically going to put these things right on top with no additional cost, because anything that has to reinforce these is just going to eat into that saving. So we just got to make sure that we're not, oh my gosh, $2 million, right? This is going to be so good. Well, it could go like this, and at the end of 25 years, we own it. What are we going to do with it? Anyway, those are just things that need to be thought about. So anyway, that's it.
I'd say those are, I mean, absolutely totally valid points, and it's questions that we hear all the time. The one thing I did want to point out, as far as the termination terms and all these other pieces of the MOU, we have sent the draft MOU over. It's sent over probably about a few weeks ago now. So those terms are available if you did, you needed to see those.
And I have to say, the reason we didn't bring it tonight is it's within legal review right now. So we wanted to get your comments, but didn't want to present something that wasn't complete. So there was no confusion, because it was still needed to be reviewed and finalized before we brought it forward. But we felt that based on this discussion, you could give us the input of those things that you would like to see.
I think the only other thing that came to mind, following up on Commissioner Lewis's comment, that along with that termination, or if we decide just to, not do it, then as far as the package of this application for this funding, that reverts back to us. That's not something that they keep, because they're using the water district, right? Or I would assume that that's the case, but say we decide, no, that's not going to happen. And then a couple of years from now, we decide, hey, we're reinforcing this reservoir, we're doing this anyway, and maybe let's take a look at this again. If there's still funding mechanisms available, I want to make sure that somehow it's not necessarily tied, because there might be 10 more firms in 2 years. I don't know, so I guess that would be my other.
In terms of ownership over the application for those grants.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I can comment on that. And yeah, it is correct. The host customer, which is the district, is the owner of those funds. So we're the developer. You can theoretically switch developers. There is an exclusivity period that we discussed, right? But after that exclusivity period, you could switch. They are your funds, not ours. We would request reimbursement for that application fee at some point if that was to come to pass, but it's absolutely yours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That exclusivity isn't like 10 years from now or something.
No.
How long?
Yeah, how long is that exclusivity?
It's 6 months, Tim. What's in there?
Yep.
Okay.
6 months.
6 months.
Okay, yeah, something. Okay, that's reasonable.
Not compete.
Walter, you guys comfortable with this deal structure? I'm just, from what I read, I'm just not. So I'm assuming you guys looked into it. Like, I can see how much revenue we're going to generate, 1 million, kilowatt hours. How much is the CapEx for this? Where's all the money going? And I just couldn't tie it out. So I'm assuming you guys can.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that at this point, for what we know, based on the conceptual project, like I said, this is really still a conceptual project that we're wanting to take to the next level, to then be able to present it with what you're looking for in terms of, now we're ready to rock and roll with a project. And here's all the details. We've looked at the sites, we've done the due diligence, we've fine-tuned the numbers based on what structural elements need to be done. We now have the funding all identified, and here is your pro forma for what this looks like over the project. And here are the terms of the MSA. Now, here's the fees you're going to pay. Here's going to operate it. All of those things. And I actually haven't seen an MSA yet, so I mean, I can't tell you exactly all the elements of that. But every contract, every agreement's a negotiated item, right? So those are things that we would have to sit down with. So, I mean, I get what you're saying is, like, if I was presenting today, we're going to do this project. This isn't there. This isn't enough. But it is what we're, at this point, if we want to continue, though, we have to go to this next step.
And that's mine. So I understand this next step just from a cash point of view. So we're basically going to write a check for a certain amount of money. Except what they're going to do is they're going to say, put that check aside, and we're going to absorb all that cost as long as we continue down the road. That's sort of what we're doing. We're paying them money
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not with this agreement. There's no exchange of money.
Nope.
At this point, it's just to keep the due diligence process going. The next step will be a money step. The next step will involve a commitment of resources, capital, and who gets to pay for what and that sort of thing. But at this step, that's not.
I would just add my experience when having done these kinds of things, that if it gets to that point where we implement the project, so they will definitely make money for the whole course of it. And why, and there's pros and cons to both of that, and however your opinion on those things, but why these kinds of companies implement these kinds of projects for agencies like this is because the district can benefit financially, benefit energy wise, and don't have the capacity to do these kinds of projects. That's just kind of why, but they definitely make a good amount of money off of this. So it's just a matter of, can we as a district steward a project like this without utilizing this kind of?
I'm all for people making money.
Yes, no, I'm just saying
That's fine.
that's kind of the balance. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand the deal. That's, maybe there's not enough data right now.
All right. Jeff, you got any questions right now?
Well, going up to 30,000 feet. So so Keith, it seems like a lot of the items on the agenda tonight are actually, you're not looking for approval for contracts. You're not looking to enter into deals with people. You're just looking into us kind of approving going forward, pursuing kind of a more detailed deal. Instead of being kind of macro, you kind of brought it more micro. And so now you found like, okay, so these guys could be good for here. Like, later on the agenda, you're going to bring up a couple other items where you're not saying, prove this, just like I found some vendors that are saying, like, this seems like the good vendor to continue to talk to. Is that right? Like, these guys you think are the right people to talk to going forward. Later on, like Tetra Tech, it's going to be like good vendors going forward. But we're not actually committing any money from us to them, right? You're just kind of trying to move it forward in terms of approving vendors.
Yeah. If I could kind of, like you said, back it up to the 30,000 foot level. So the district has a goal to look at our energy uses and reduce it. It's not strictly a project for, making money or, financial strictly, although that is part of the criteria, the threefold criteria. But we're looking at, one of the goals of the district is to look at our renewables and how we do that. So this is the project that we're looking at. It's a step-by-step process. These guys are putting the effort together right now. We're not paying them a dime. They're doing all this pro bono because they feel at some point down the line, they can make this work for both of us. But it's a step-by-step process. And so the first step was to really, give them our data, have them take a look at what's potential. That's the first, very conceptual, what can we do conceptually to do and to meet these goals? And so that's really what they've done thus far. That's what you're seeing today. It's conceptual. This conceptually could be a way that you guys could get your goal established and met. We're not at all at the point right now where we've done detailed designs, where we've negotiated costs and fees, where we've looked at structures. I mean, all of that needs to be done before we commit to anything. But what we are committing to today, I guess, is kind of that question. And I think that's really what we need to have a comfort level with is how far are we going today? Because I had similar issues when we were looking at the MOU is, does the MOU give us that opportunity to move this forward without saying you must go to that next level? And that is something that you have expressed today that, yeah, conceptually, we see what you're doing. There's an idea you can move to the next level, but we don't want to be committed to something because there's a whole lot of questions we got about what would happen at the next step, which understandable. None of this is meant to cover that next step. It's only meant to get us to move this forward. So at some point, we can get to a discussion in the future about, okay, now this is a much more detailed proposal because you're going to have a lot more information, a lot more detail. This is the design. This is the rubber meets the road. This is the actual pro forma over 30-year. You're looking at everything. And at that point, we may come back as staff and say, this is no good. We tried, but that's okay. It didn't work. So our recommendation is to not go any further, or it may come back and we're like, yeah, it hit what we thought when we looked at it conceptually. Nothing's changed. It still looks like a very viable project. We think the terms of these agreements, what we've discussed, are favorable for the district. We don't see any issues with that. And so our recommendation at that point would be, we're going to move forward, and we've looked at everything, and we could have similar discussions at that time. Did you look at your structures? Did you look at options? Did you look at all these other things? And these are all very, very good questions, I think, that will need to be answered. Absolutely. Before we commit a dime to this project. But at this point today, what we're saying is, to get even to that point, we have to have some more increased engagement, some commitment to scale to say, okay, we'll work with you because this is going to cost you some money and time and resources to get us to that next point, as opposed to continuing to ask them to work pro bono. I think that's really kind of where we're at.
If I can jump on that, because the action tonight is a recommendation to the board to enter into an MOU. And so I think what the commission has is pretty broad in terms of what you can recommend, right? A range, right? You could range. We don't recommend the board enter into it. You could recommend or do. You could also recommend that the board enter into an MOU. But these are the provisions that we would want to see in an MOU if we were to recommend it. If the MOU didn't have these provisions, then our recommendation wouldn't be. So it's pretty broad with what you can recommend to the board in terms of what you actually want to see in the MOU. And we're working on that right now. And so we can't just guarantee it, but the board's action and what you recommend could be presented to the board in kind of any sort of way that you wanted it. So you're not limited to just, do you recommend it? Yes or no? There can be things added to that recommendation.
So I haven't been on the commission before, but you heard theories that the commission wanted, and you've kind of brought it down to, okay, so I heard your theories. So now I found some potential vendors like these guys and Tetra Tech going forward. And these seem like the good ones. So we've gone from theory to okay, I found some people that could probably be good, but we're not approving any of these vendors yet. You've just kind of like gotten rid of the riffraff. And so we're not having to think about theory anymore. We're like kind of getting closer to detail. But we're not signing any like hardcore contracts. We're just like, you kind of helped us kind of focus our
There's a lot
thoughts.
in that. Let me unpack a little bit. So the commission recommends to the board to sign. So there will be a signing of an agreement. The commission does not do that in this particular case, but you provide valuable input and advisory roles to the board, because they'll want to know, what did the commission have to say? Did they go to the commission? But when it goes to the board, what we will be recommending is an actual signature on an agreement
At that time.
Yes.
If we say so to them.
Yeah, if you say, for example,
Tonight.
as John basically pointed out, you really kind of have maybe three general options. It's staff's recommendation. Yes, we recommend you move this forward. It's no, we don't want you to move this forward. Or it's, we want to add this to it if you're going to move it forward. And so can you tell the board that we're okay with this, but we want you to do X, Y, and Z? That's really kind of how this works for all of the items that go to the board. That, this is the first step. Similar to this project, that's a first step that may go on.
So I'll move the recommended action with I'm sorry. Well, you can still comment up to the motion, or if it dies.
I saw two criteria for our district qualifying for one of the programs. One was the high-risk area.
Yeah.
Very clear, high-risk fire area. Low income, and there was a chunk of Laguna Beach carved out there. I assume that there's some data that backs that up, because I would think that'd be an immediate at some level going, I've applied for enough grants around here and you put 929, what is our zip code?
92651.
92651 down, and you're just throwing in the pile that says you don't need money.
Yeah.
So what was that calculus that showed that it looked like about a third of the city was low income?
Yeah, so that was actually directly from the SCHIP program. They have a number of different maps that you have to reference, one of which is the high fire threat districts, in addition to the California Priority Population List, which is based on, it takes into account income, it's a climate impact, the overall potential impact of climate change, a number of different things. But there's literally a link in the SCHIP application process where you click on that, you go in, you put it in, and that's where that data came from. It was pulled directly from that. So it does qualify.
I'm assuming that, but I'm just stunned that would.
We've run into this before in other arenas.
With the CARE program of SoCal Edison and SoCal Gas.
Yeah,
We asked our public agency representatives if they could give us a high level percentage of the number of customers within our service area, or the zip code, actually 92651.
yeah.
That qualify for the CARE program, low income discount. It's actually 25%
Really?
of the community because it's based on retirees. They are asset rich but cash poor.
That's right. Okay, so it's, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, they have a very low cash flow. And maybe they have 2 or 3 mortgages on there. And they're living off of that. Okay, thank you. That was my one question. I saw that this one doesn't make sense. Mark, you want to?
Yeah, so I would move the move the staff recommended action to move this forward with the language in the MOU that provides the off ramp with no cost to the district whatsoever.
Termination.
Yeah, the termination, sorry, yes. And then all the other things that were discussed, I know will have to be vetted when they go through the next process. So we're not trying, I don't personally want to put any of that stuff into the motion, but I just think it's good to have the awareness of the discussion. So you're not just looking at this with rose colored glasses and these things still need to be vetted. So that's more just a comment for the board so that they use the kind of the things. And I guess they're going to watch
The law in motion.
so the motion is to recommend that staff recommended action, move it along with the termination clause that we owe no fees to them.
Can I ask one question or second it?
Sure.
How many of these installs have you and your team done so far?
Shay, you want to speak to some of the history of the work that we've done here?
Yeah, we have about 65 or so megawatts of solar, about 80 megawatt hours of energy storage, and about 30 megawatts of generators, which are not a part of this project, but those are the 3 primary technologies that we've deployed across the country. And then I don't know if you asked Tim himself personally in California over the last 15 years, I think he'd give you a very big number of solar projects that he has worked on as an engineer and myself as well. But scale as a company, that's where we're at. And I believe the total numbers for this site are, what are they, Tim? How many megawatts of 553 kilowatts of solar and 600 kilowatts or 2,000 kilowatt hours of batteries.
Yeah.
So we've done about 80,000 kilowatt hours of batteries.
I second the motion.
Okay. Are there any public comment? Henry?
No.
Public comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll say aye.
With the caveat that I'm going to lean on our astute legal counsel to capture a lot of our success.
Are there any opposed or that everyone?
No. It's 5-0.
Okay.
Well, thank you for helping us understand the project tonight. And it's a lot more complicated than I think we've seen of an item in a while. So I appreciate your.
Yes, we certainly appreciate your patience on it. Thank you very much. And I look forward to moving this along.
Thank you all. I know there's more questions still, but we will answer those in the coming months here. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Item 4.6.
For your attention, you want to take it?
Well,
That's a record.
on Andrea.
Okay, well,
I will.
it's, go for it.
No, okay. Thank you, Commission. The district's record retention schedule is needed to be updated from time to time. We do this to ensure that we're up to date with current codes and guidelines with respect to retention needs, but also that we're compliant with federal and state code statutes that have to do with retention because they get updated from time to time as well. So we ensure that any revisions and additions comply with state and federal law and regulated or related regulations. And the schedule was also reviewed by the district legal council going through this. I will point out that at the back of your back of the staff report is our schedule that is categorized by our major functions within the district. It includes the title of the records, a short description, and then whatever codes or regulations that it has to comply with. Those citations are in there. And then there's a schedule listing of how long we keep or retain these records. I don't know if Andrea, you want to point out anything specific that was updated? Okay. Okay, great. So with that, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Notice one, there's PE, which is permanent. And there was one that was 30 years. I was curious. 30 years versus permanent. Like audits and stuff are permanent. I forget which one was 30 years. It was just, it's,
Yeah, no.
it's like, why didn't they just say permanent?
A lot of our financial are 7 to 10. You know which one, Andrea's 30?
Yeah, MSDS.
Material safety data sheets. So, for example, if you've had a chemical on site and somebody got sick from it, but 25 years later, they want you to be able to reference good stuff.
But it was 31 years later, they'd be out of. So,
Yes.
any other questions? The item for him to return?
Second.
He said he had to make an emergency call.
Okay.
so Give a forum.
Moved and seconded.
So now we have to,
Other public comment.
public comment? So now we have to do a roll call because we're not here.
No, it's missing. No, he's not.
Just comment.
We just do it? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now 4.7. The new license facility policy.
Yes. Thank you, Commission. This policy in front of you is a draft policy. It would be new for the district, and it's the really kind of the culmination of the active discussion that the Commission has had regarding our licensed communication facilities projects. I mean, as you see, we get bombarded in a way by a lot of Excel carriers and tower companies with requests to either install new equipment, new siting, modify existing equipment, things like that. And this commission has been very engaged with the process, which we appreciate. And from that has percolated this policy because we realize, hey, we don't have a real formal written framework to engage with and manage effectively the antenna program that we do have. So we appreciate the commission's involvement in this. And I think that this policy is kind of that final step to ensure that we really protect the district's assets and interests. We generate revenue from the district and ratepayer assets within what we can do by law and within market value, of course. So this policy is a draft, kind of that framework of not only guiding staff in terms of what we need to do, what the policies and procedures are every time we face a request like this, but also it gives the cell carrier and tower company community an idea of what they need to comply with and do when they come to us with any type of request for their equipment. So this is the draft in front of you. The commission and the board have provided a number of comments over the last couple of years as to what they would like to see in a policy like this and how we manage and what our terms and conditions are for the program. So we have incorporated that into the policy that's in your packet. Legal counsel, BBK, has reviewed the policy for the first draft and provided a number of suggestions and recommendations. Those suggestions are not in the document that's in front of you right now, but will be incorporated into it for purposes of the board meeting if you decide to that you want to the board, or you recommend today for the board to look at it. I will tick off just really quickly what those changes are. John made sure that we pointed out that this policy would only affect future new license agreements and new amendments, because we cannot apply something like this retroactively to the current agreements. But anytime we get a new agreement, clearly we would start moving forward that. There were a couple of items in there that do not apply to us that are FCC shot clock requirements. Because we're a special district, we're not beholden by those shot clock requirements like the city is. And essentially what that is, there's a time limit from the time of an application to the time that we have to respond back to them. Otherwise it's deemed approved. Thanks. We're not guided by that. Thank you. In the policy in front of you, I have an appendix of the fee schedule. I think we're going to remove that fee schedule altogether. After speaking with John, what we'd like to do is in our next go round on our fee study in January is start adding fees that cover our cost of service, but we need to have that fee study done before we can put that into our policy. So we'll make sure that that is clearly updated. And then we just wanted to make sure and give BBK the assurance that any time that we are going to enter into any new license or new amendment, that BBK reviews the amendments and licenses and has enough time to opine on the language, particularly the legal part of it, which we'll continue doing. So I'll make those changes in this before we send this to the board if we decide to move forward that way tonight. And with that, if there are any questions?
Mark? I have questions on 3 sections. So under 3.6, you have the 3.5% highlighted in yellow. Would it be appropriate to say 3.5% or CPI, whichever is greater? I mean, I don't know if that's
that is clearly a policy decision based on the market analysis that Sandra Jacobs did that she presented to you a number of months ago. It's a wide range. Some agencies have a flat rate like we do of 3%. Some agencies have that option of the greater of local CPI, and you have to define what that CPI would be, or a flat rate. So I've highlighted that for now. Sandra had recommended, because we're at 3, to go up to 3.5. She thinks that's justifiable. But clearly, again, it's a policy decision.
anyway, that'd just be for the board to take up. I mean, if you have CPI 6 or 7, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and it kind of goes to the point of the value. So
Yeah.
just a
I think that's-
comment.
I mean, we'd certainly like to hear what you guys think about how you want to do that. I think the advantage of having a fixed rate is the simplicity of it.
Sure.
If you want to then do an adjustment each year and go figure out what that CPI is, we could certainly do that too. I mean, that's something we're capable of doing. Anything, I don't know if there's anything else to that.
There is, once these license agreements are executed, the carriers have their own, accounts payable staff that, will automatically write the check for the monthly rental amounts based on the agreement. Sometimes when these things get a little bit more complicated, you have these options, they get missed. So it's just gonna be a little bit more effort on staff's part to manage that, to make sure it gets that if it were the CPI is greater than a 3 or 3.5%, that CPI is calculated properly, because we probably would want to have the CPI for the LA area rather than a national number. So that means that the AT&T office in Virginia would then have to know what the LA CPI is and apply that at that time. So it's a little bit more of an administrative burden, but it has the benefit to us of generating more revenue for that particular year coming in.
At this point, I'm merely raising a question. I'm either here nor there on.
Right.
And it's just, I understand the administrative burden, so I know you guys go through CPI to generate what raises should happen and things like that. So anyway, just a comment. Next one would be on 3.7. So this would just be if the board of directors delegate to the general manager to review and approve all license agreements. The only comment I would have there is if there was some issue with site that required like a DRB thing. So if administratively got approved and all of a sudden the thing, some appendage to a tower goes up and the community freaks out and they look back and go, well, where was that process? So I don't know if that's considered or if it should be considered, but those are very sensitive things. So anyway, that one gets worked out. And good
comment.
And then 4.5, the first application, it talks about 2-phase review, which is fine. I get the concept phase and all that. I think there's been a couple times where we've had concept phase come to the commission and we ask for, where's the photo render? Where's the, and it kind of helps in the deliberation of whether that seems good, bad, or indifferent. So I just think that would be nice to have as part. I understand the 2-phase, here's your concept, but they should have enough in it to show, here's our concept. Do you guys like it? Or if it stinks right away, then let's just throw it out. So I'd just like to see that in that phase. That's it. Thanks.
Walter, your thoughts on this?
Expressed my thoughts many times.
Hey.
Still
don't know why they see.
I think this is a good rewrite.
Yeah, I don't have any comments either. Thanks, Mom.
I think, okay, I just said, well, on, I think it's 21, there's one of the under section 2.1, just, you reference NEPA, and I think you should add CEQA, one thing. And then,
I'm sorry, Commissioner, what section?
well, let me find it again.
21. So it should be 2.1.
2.1 or 2.
Right above
21. Oh, the NEPA comment.
Yeah, that,
Okay, yeah, thank you.
yeah, the NEPA as the CEQA. And then, the Commissioner Lewis covered, the comment that I had is, it could, the delegation's fine, but I do think that if that happens, but I do think that it's really important that the sensitivity of view and view blockage and all of those potential design review type criteria be really vetted well. So I think that is an important comment. And I think that the renderings, sometimes we've asked, I think there's one that has the fake tree and, those kinds of things that I think are important. So, and then the other thing that crossed my mind because of Commissioner Spender's comments over the last couple of years regarding the 5-year renewal just being automatic without reconsideration. Is there a way that we can tweak that a little bit? Because then we're kind of stuck for 15 years. And if like we had the whole 5G discussion, right? And so I guess could there be some trigger or something where it's not just so automatic that we're stuck Now, since you're the attorney that we're stuck with all of these, can you unstick something in this new policy?
I mean, the policy is just guiding. I mean, I think probably you do want some flexibility in the policy to negotiate with the carriers. I mean, I think on one hand, carriers want the longevity because they're spending the time and resources installing all of this. So I mean, to the extent there's guidelines or guidance in the policy about, preferred methods of terms, but I would think that you'd want some flexibility in a policy to, in some situations, maybe what you're talking about is advantageous because they're willing to pay a premium, I don't know, for a longer term. And there very well could be scenarios where maybe for some reason the carrier wants a shorter term. If the policy is like locked in on everything should be a 5-year term, you lose that. So, I mean, again, you can craft the policy from a policy perspective to kind of recommend whatever you want. I mean, I guess you could even put in mandatory language, but I think probably from a negotiating standpoint, you would want flexibility. So to the extent that if you're looking for something specific, you could, that could be added as a preferred, maybe there's a default term and it's, it's in the discretion of, the city or the district and staff based upon, whatever the standards would be to do it.
Did you guys talk to the carriers and ask what?
Yeah, these are all negotiated agreements. So they would come back if we were to enter an agreement that had any sort of 5-year extension options, that would be something that would be brought forth for approval. I think a lot of the ones that we're talking about were ones that were done a long time ago. I don't think we've had any new ones in a while, but those ones all have those provisions in there. It's fairly typical that you would have, I think, like 2 5-year, I think, or 3.
That's very typical in the industry, according to our, the consultant that came here and presented, as well as our management consultant now that both have worked with the Verizon and AT&T's of the world in those companies. It is very typical to have 3 to 5-year optional terms that are exercised by the carrier unless there's a breach of contract. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to follow that, but every new license and new amendment will come to this body as well as the board. And at that point in time is when you have your time to poke holes in it and make recommended changes that we would then propose back to the carrier or the tower company. And at that point, they can say yay or nay.
Yes,
it's up to them.
Those are,
You will have the option to look at those just like you do now, that procedure won't change.
right.
That every new document will come before you to look at.
Mhm.
Sure. And legal counsel will look at it too.
Yeah, if you don't like the deal,
Right.
we don't have to sign it.
No, I understand that. I guess I'm just, I just know some of those earlier contracts, we were kind of stuck. And so as long as there's that remedy going forward, which I know that you have been exercising.
Well, just clear remedy on new ones or remedy on the existing ones, but we can,
New ones.
okay.
New ones only.
Just- Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think
So we
that's
are stuck up. What's our other
That's
existing?
principally where the comments have been over the last 2 years that we've heard. It's been all focused on what do we do better when we get to have that opportunity to get into new contracts, which is why we did that study and why we have this coming for you today. But I do think that, when's the next new one coming?
Well, Dish Network was approved conceptually by the commission and the board, so that will be,
That'll be our first
that'll be
opportunity.
our first MLA, yeah.
First new one.
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause all we did was say the concept was okay to do.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
But I think that's when the rubber will meet the road. I mean, it's like, okay, we've had all these comments, we've gone through these studies, we've looked at our policy. Now we have this opportunity to look at an agreement. And do we like the extensions, don't like the extension fees, et cetera.
Could you, when you present this to the board, highlight the differences based on our standards input? Besides the 3.5, there were other things that she talked about.
Yeah, the ground and air.
The
lead.
ground and airspace
Yeah,
elements.
An airspace and,
Yeah.
if each new piece of it, because it was basically what she said, if you add a new piece of equipment, even though it doesn't do anything to the town,
Right,
it does something to the air.
yes.
So I just, because it was a good study. And it's, I just think it'd be nice to highlight that, say, hey, we had a consultant and here's how this consultant is paying for itself, because here's the extra revenue that's going to come in as someone says, oh, we just going to do this new antenna. okay, fine, every new piece you add to your tower costs you X much more money.
Right, and that's where BBK said, hey, if you're going to itemize those, you have to have the fee study
Right.
to support it per Proposition 26 requirements. So
Whatever,
Make sure.
I'm just saying.
yeah, and we will we'll inventory for the board.
Yeah.
Good comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and the co-location was the other.
Yeah, co-location fee.
But yeah, that's a good point. We will do our best to highlight those key things that Sandra said we should
Yep.
include
You should include.
Yeah.
That weren't there now.
Correct.
there.
To move this forward, there's been a number of comments, hopefully been taken down, like the comments I made, just made, the sequel comment. So if I could make a motion to approve this, to move it to the board, wrapping all of those things into it, and all, I can try and remember those if you'd like, or somebody jotted all those down. There was the sequel issue, there was the air and space issue, there was the
Co-location.
co-location issue, there was
Adding the photo with the mock-ups.
with the mock-up and the concern about full delegation without without the DRB approval. So Andrea, sorry, if you can kind of frame, and then the 3.5% thing that's more of a discussion point.
Yeah.
We will highlight to the board what we chose.
But that's not part of the necessary recognition. If they consider what's going to
Right.
do. So there's a my motion, sorry, Andrea.
And I'll second that.
Second.
Okay,
Public comment? Andrea? Yep. No public comment? Oh, final.
Can I get clarification on the DRB element? Because that is not,
Don't use DRB, just,
No,
it's just basically that the sensitivity of view, privacy, those kinds of.
basically,
I even maybe try to rephrase it a little bit differently, because I mean, I think the way this is stated is that it could delegate it to me. And I think because of the sensitivities that are around this, I don't think that's wise to delegate it to the general manager. It should remain with the board, which I would like to see.
Yeah. that's-
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the comment, because there's the DRB and all these other things that could come up, and that really needs to be a public process. The board needs.
so maybe the language needs to be just don't delegate it to the.
Yes,
manager.
that's what I was kind of getting. Yeah.
So do I need to amend my motion?
No, I think that's what the way my notes were reading.
Okay, yeah,
Good.
okay.
I'll second.
Yeah.
All
You already
that.
seconded.
Yeah.
No public comment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now we have our remodel project.
I recuse myself on 4.8 because I have relationships with a number of the contractors that are bidding on this project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's okay, right?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Okay,
That's fine.
Go hide some.
All right,
This is. Who's it?
this will be Bob.
Bobby's?
We have to get confirmation he's out of the room. We're good.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, the item brought before you, well, good evening, commissioners and the new commissioner. So yeah, this is the project that has been the district's plate for a while. As some of you may know, but we'll try to catch everybody up to speed. The current locker rooms at this facility are really in a not a good state or condition. There's OSHA compliance issues in terms of access to the lockers, the spacing. The bathrooms are impacted with the amount of staff we have. So we've basically identified several deficiencies in our current even break room area, which is right next to the showers and the bathrooms and the locker rooms for staff, operations staff in particular, who uses this mainly. So this project has had many iterations, even before my time, for a lot of our time. So Christopher has the most rich history on all of this. But the item up for consideration tonight is that Christopher reached out to a local architectural firm or firms and retained Todd Skandarian architect for a essentially a remodel project. This remodel project was going to alleviate those deficiencies by using the existing building spaces. Now, the existing building spaces currently had a use, so we had to alleviate that site use, which operations staff extremely helpful and assisted in alleviating those to create the space, which then the architect could come up with the plan. So here was the process. Again, just a summary of the process that we went through. Once we had the architectural plans that also had mechanical, electrical, and plumbing components, we took the project out to bid. We solicited bids from 7 qualified contractors that all had positive references on this similar type of work. 3 contractors attended a mandatory pre-bid meeting so they could see the sites, they could see the spaces that they were going to utilize, they could see the constraints, so they were familiar with the work that they were going to bid on. There was 1 set of questions and answers that were issued throughout the bid process. So we did receive 3 bids submitted through Planet Bids. They are included in the staff reports, with Laguna Construction and Builder being the apparent low bidder. Staff then reviewed the bids and found no exceptions to the bid that was submitted by Laguna Construction and Builder. As this is sort of out of the realm of water pipes and reservoirs and pump stations, we don't necessarily have time or expertise to oversee this type of work on a daily, hourly basis. So at the same time, concurrently, we also issued an RFP for construction management inspection services. This has to do with overseeing all the building, again, electrical, mechanical, plumbing installations, and as that goes forward. So we did receive 2 proposals from qualified construction management firms that are listed in this document as well. Michael Baker International being what we believe to be the most responsive after a detailed look at the proposed hour, understanding of what was all going to be entailed with a remodel of this magnitude. So those were the 2. So those are the 2 contracts that we are asking the mission recommend, but we'll get into that a little later. So again, we found the Michael Baker proposal to have a commitment to safety, constructability review, project communication, and a very strong technical approach, which was all pros for us to recommend them. From an environmental impact, as this is a remodel of an existing facility, staff believes that the existing building interior may be considered exempt from SEQA section 15301, as that provides exemption for repair, maintenance, minor alterations of existing public structures and facilities involving negligible or no expansion. Again, the use is still locker room, bathroom, break room. We're going to stay consistent with that. We've not expanded beyond that use. There's the fiscal impact portion has a kind of summary version of prior budgeted years, the total dollar amounts there. Now, what we're also asking is a budget adjustment of $220,000 from another project to result in a total budget amount that would then allow the GM or the board to authorize a construction contract with GM's authority for a 10% construction contingency, which is typical of our construction contracts, as well as the construction management inspection services, professional services agreement. I won't read all the numbers, and the recommendation is rather lengthy, so I'll open it up to questions, but the recommended action is stated in the staff paper.
Good project, long time coming. Frankly, I'm concerned that we need $220,000 extra. I mean, that's great that we have the budget capacity to move money around, and it's good that the low bid is quite a bit lower than the next 2. So that's a good thing. So yeah, overall, I support the project and it's good. I'm just, 220,000 over is a little swallow, but from what I understand, we're going to take money from the Rimrock project. So the overall bottom line of the budget doesn't change. We're just taking from here. That's my only question.
the only thing that came up when you mentioned about the secret exemption, I haven't seen the plans, or are you changing the external part of the building? Everything's internal. Okay, so there's nothing's going to trigger the historicity of, of the Aubrey St. Clair building. Any of that.
No, and that side of the building is not,
That's not the historical.
it's
part?
not the historic part, and we do not have a historic designation for the building in general.
Okay, good.
We maintain the historic integrity of the
Right.
building, which is something that's been done always on staff level. But what we are proposing is within the constraints of the existing.
Okay, I just wanted to check that
I'm
box.
correct.
Okay, good.
So have you already received the exemption, the secret exemption, or you're planning?
We have not filed it yet. That's where this is what our finding would be, but we would, we're asking for concurrence or if you have other,
I'm just curious, like who's carrying
staff files it. Once this moves forward after the board, we will file it. We have a pretty standard form that we use for all that.
So it's the board action that really sets that in motion as far as agreeing with the finding that it's exempt. And then based on that, then we file the paperwork.
I would love it if majority of the things that we did were CEQA exempt.
Oh, we would love that. And there are actually quite a few things that are, because I think a lot of what we do is kind of a in-kind replacement or work and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Because, when you start construction, I can just see, and it's visible to the public and they think, oh my gosh, what are you doing? That's why I asked the question, but everything is pretty much internal, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Other questions, comments?
Seems like a no-brainer.
It's working on it for a long time, and this is the second go.
It is a second go round, and yes, I
This
think
is
in the
improved.
engineering committee, we did mention the fact that in some ways it was good that we were able to go back and redo this, because it originally came in, the bids from the first one were higher, I believe. And I believe then we came back with a better design. And that was as a result of not getting good bids the first go round. So there was a silver lining in it. And now I think we have a better project and we're moving forward. And so, yeah, I think this is a long time coming. That's when I started as general manager, this was one of the first things I was told: we need to get this done. And it's just been difficult. I mean, we hired an architect. It took a long time to go through that. Again, we went through the bidding twice. The architect with a lot of back and forth, but we're there now. And I really do think that our operations staff, who's going to be the principal beneficiaries of this, have really been patient with us. So I'm really happy that we're able now to bring this forward.
Overdue.
Is this the?
I move approval.
No, this is just
This is completely separate.
just ours. This is just ours. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions? You have a motion and a
Move
second.
approval.
Second.
All those in favor? No public comment? Excuse me. Any public comment?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna just, yeah,
You're acting chair.
I said, I'm just dumb. I'm just a dumb acting chair. So we voted, right? Everybody said
We approved it. Now you vote after the public.
after public comment. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. You go grab small tickets. Thank you. Go get.
And now we go back to 4.4,
Go back
which is now
go back to the Bs.
Yeah.
We're on
4.4.
4.4. 4.4.
Washington switch them.
These. Oh, now it's these.
Now the bee's knees.
Why did we
Remember that?
why did we skip that?
Because the.
We exchanged the voice.
Oh.
Bert, is this you?
This is me, yes. I will keep this brief. This project is, as Commissioner Neve says, the bee's knees of projects. The Laguna Beach Garden Club, who we've partnered in the past on different programs and events, has generously donated a commissioned mural to the district by artist Mark Wiley, known for starting a global art project called For the Good of the Hive. And what his project or an organization does is he has a commitment to hand paint 50,000 honeybees around the world, which represents the number in a healthy, thriving hive. His honeybees symbolize two things that every human craves: a sense of purpose about our existence, hive, and the connectedness to each other. Each mural provides a great moment in the community, in their heart and in their consciousness. The Garden Club is funding the entire cost of this mural, which is $32,000, along with the artist's accommodations while completing the mural. The mural, I've provided some photos in the packet, would be located on a 25-foot long, 6-foot high concrete block wall facing 3rd Street that is in between our yard entrance and our rental property at 344. So if you look at the picture, it's probably something you drive by every day and never even see it because it's just a nondescript wall. So a perfect opportunity to take a spot on that walkway between here and the senior center and what's down there, and creating a nice moment with some world-class art. He is anticipated to start the work in January of 2024. It's expected to take about 3 to 4 weeks. I provided a rendering of the proposed drawing. We will bring back the more official rendering once he's gotten it. This is just to give you an idea of what he's looking at. One of the requests that we had was that there was a water element incorporated into the artwork, which he was in agreement 100%. He has works all over the world. He has a huge work at the Smithsonian National Zoo, Birds Bees Global Headquarters. He paints a lot of murals on public buildings such as schools, fire departments. Again, all photos that are included with the staff report. If this item is approved, then staff will work with the Garden Club to put together the application that will go through the City Arts Council and then to the City Council for approval. When we get that packet together, which will have the actual rendering and what it's going to look like on the wall, we'll bring that packet back to the commission before it goes to the Arts Commission, just so you can see what it is and how it's going to look on the wall. On recommendation from council, we are asking you to recommend approval by the board of directors for this item. So if you approve it tonight to move forward, we'll take it to the board at their September 28th meeting and get approval for that. But again, a great project, no cost to the district, and I think it's going to generate a lot of great publicity for us. With that, I'll take any questions.
One comment. So, I'm going to approve it. However, it's not a local artist, right?
Correct.
So in the future, could we focus on just local artists?
Yes, and we typically do that. We've had the issue comes with when we look at local artists, the ones that have approached us for commissioned pieces, it's been to purchase. So we had an artist come that wanted to present us with a sculpture in the garden, but it was $42,000. The district cannot spend those kinds of funds because it's a gift to public funds and it's not what we're here for. So this was brought to us and it's been brought to you because it is being paid for solely by the Laguna Beach Garden. But yes, we typically do. Our mural on the side of the building, which was a partnership with Community Art Project, is a local artist, Michelle Taylor. That was something that we were able to do through the generosity of them, but we definitely look to try to get local artists to participate.
So not to have an advertisement, but LOCA, Laguna Outreach for Community Arts, they would get you an artist that would do it for free. Okay. And they would be a local artist. And
we can definitely look into that in the future.
If the next time something pops up, my wife is the president. So this is why I'm saying sounds like a little advertisement, but there are a few murals in town that they've overseen. We have we're getting ready to unveil one at Pacific Marine Mammal Center from a local artist that's free. So, okay, just
Good knowledge.
We do have a beautiful garden that we could probably use some statuary.
Some arching.
well, as an art town, just, you know, if we could kind of utilize the locals, definitely. But I'm not stopping anything about this project, because this project looks great and I love it. And so this is awesome, just for the future. Yep.
Noted.
Additional comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Public comment.
Public comment? Well, I can public comment anytime,
Anytime before.
before we vote.
Before you vote.
Okay.
So moved.
No
Second.
public comment. We have one. Who's the second?
I am.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So. Now that. Which is the 5-year strategic plan.
So
Yeah. Well.
Good job.
Well, it's slightly less complicated than the energy project, maybe, hopefully. So just to kind of give a little background, the district did a strategic plan in 2013, I believe. It was a 10-year plan. It sat on a shelf, like most places do, and that was how it worked. In the last couple of budget cycles, though, we've tried to extract actions from that plan, and we've included those in the budget process and said, oh, we need to actually make this real and make it something that we can communicate to the board that this is how we're moving this plan along. And that was kind of the, I guess, maybe, if you will, the first iteration of trying to make this a living document. And then in the past budget cycle in this last year, you also saw all of these strategic plan elements included in the budget. And so those were adopted during that budget process. But what we don't have is really more of a formalized process, if you will. And so what we are introducing tonight is actually starting with all of those goals that you did recently approve in that budget, which we've committed now these resources to. We're putting into this formalized plan so you can now see it as a separate document, standalone. Here's our strategic plan. And what we want to be able to do is use this not just as a budget time item, but to throughout the year give you an opportunity to be updated, to track what we're doing, to think about what might come next if you have some ideas. And so this really serves as more of a living document. And so what we're planning to do, and it's written up in page or section 8 here, the new process that we're hoping to now employ starting tonight, is that each September following the budget, you will see the strategic plan as it stood as the budget, but you can then start to talk in September about, if you would like, there's no obligation, but maybe you're starting to think about things for next year. Yeah, here's what we're working on. Maybe tonight you saw what was going on with the energy efficiency, which is one of those goals. And you don't necessarily like that, or maybe you want to amend it. So you might start to give some feedback to us. In January, we're going to come again. You're going to see this document again. At that time, we'll give you a little bit of update of where we are, our strategic plan elements, the actions that we said we're going to do. And again, you have the opportunity to kind of go, yeah, I think we're tracking the right direction, or, you know, I'm starting to get a feel for a different direction I'd like to go. So that by the time we do get to the budget time of year, that'll be your final opportunity to look at this and say, yeah, or no, or let's change it. And then we can make the changes to the budget that gets adopted that reflects what those goals are going to be. So again, what you're seeing tonight, we're not really looking at this as, hey, you know, we want you to, you know, change, add, amend. This is really what you approved just recent. But it's a reminder of what you did approve. But it's really to start this process of saying, we now have a formal strategic plan. Let's go through and keep looking at this. And we're going to use it to communicate to you guys, you know, how we're doing with each of these actions. You'll notice the things that are already familiar in there because we're talking about it tonight. The locker room, that's in there. The energy project, that's in there. I mean, I think, in fact, everything in tonight is in that plan. And I think that's what you're going to see throughout the year. And you'll be able to go back and trace that back and go, they're doing what they were told to do and they're following through. And so that's really what we're hoping to do. And then organizationally, we are from the top to bottom, we're all working off the same one too. So we're all on the same page. So that's what is here tonight. I just want to especially thank Christopher because he did so much to put this together. Just really thank you for that effort. But I do think this is kind of a new approach. Really, I want to look at a strategic plan and the actions as a living document. Most organizations, they just do it, check a box, throw it on the shelf. And I don't want that. I want this to be something we all are on the same page with. And so that's what you see tonight. So with that, I don't want to, belabor it or anything. It's not that complicated. So hopefully you can see what we have. But if there are comments and or questions or anything like that, we'd love to hear it.
So yeah, I applaud the effort. I've been involved in a number of strategic plans and I do exactly what you say. It sounds good while you're working on them for that one day that you all come together and you put it all out there and you put it on the shelf and it goes away. So I think it's great to have this. I think it's pretty straightforward, simplistic, and then it makes sure that everybody's marching to the same. So it's great. It looks fantastic. It's easy to read. I just had a couple of questions about, there's a goal in here about non-temporary legal.
Yes.
So we're just talking about trying to solidify contract legal. We're not trying to hire full time.
Right now, BBK, we do not have a contract for them like we would typically have as a district attorney. So yes, the goal would be to shore that up, if you will.
Yeah, but not, I just want to make sure not like, we're not going to hire an attorney to sit on staff.
Not in.
No. Oh, it
I
was,
didn't figure that was it, but I just wanted.
you want to see him here in this? No. No, it was.
I just don't want to afford to have him sitting here the whole time.
For example, the city just recently hired BBK, city attorney. Every district, every public agency has somebody like that. We don't have somebody officially. We've been working under a temporary situation and nothing's more permanent than a temporary situation. So we want to change that.
Temporary classrooms have a way of becoming.
Yeah. So we want to make that more of a contractual arrangement versus just.
Then at some point, I see in here, there was a talk about a meter test program, testing 100 meters a year. So since we have AMI and all that, what exactly does that mean as far as testing the meters? What do we do now we have AMI because it's a lot easier to get to?
So for water loss, we need to identify and test so many meters a year. So really what we're doing is going out and we're just actually being able to pull the meter, we'll test it. So we are confident that it is working correctly. And then if we get customers saying, well, how do you know these are working correctly? We can say that one, we pull the meters and test it, but then also for the state water loss report, in order for us to keep getting a better score, we have to be, regardless of whether they're smart meters, we have to go out and test.
We actually pull it.
Correct. We
Put it
pull
on the bench, put a temporary one in.
Actually, we just swap it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just wanted.
And currently we're doing that. We're hoping to create a meter testing bench right here at the district that staff can do it right here. And so
Those are my own. So yeah. Let's take.
And I agree. I particularly like the way you segmented, so you have like water resource reliability. Then you can turn around also and look at staff and make, it's a great transparent accountability factor, I think as well for all the way throughout the organization. I love the way you've organized it. Good job.
Anything else?
There's one error in the gallons. We used 1.3 million gallons. I think that should be a B.
oh, okay.
Oh.
I'm doing such a good job with water conservation.
Yeah. I read that. I went, wait a minute. Yeah, go ahead. It looks so, it seems so well. I forget it's on page 9 of the report.
Okay, we'll look at that. Public comment.
I'm sorry. One. Yeah, I move the recommended action.
I'll second that.
Public comment,
No public comment.
recommended action. Second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Now we go to 4.11.
Pass the ball to Bobby again.
Pass the ball to Bonnie. This item comes with an exhibit. Yay. you can look at that if you'd like. So the El Moro Reservoir site, those who maybe aren't too familiar with it, picture, Bird might be able to. Just to show the overall site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. So, again, what, as Keith had mentioned earlier, his report, the district is looking into facilitating better use of an existing facility. So, essentially the El Moro Reservoir site is kind of on the northern end of town by the El Moro Elementary School. There are 2 5 million gallon drinking water reservoirs at the site. And then throughout the years, as kind of outlined through the 50s and 60s and then into the 90s, many changes have happened at the site. We've had additions, we've had, vehicle storage, warehouse addition. And so the site itself has sort of grown just throughout the decades and maybe without an overview site planning focus. So when there's a need, you just go up there and throw something together and put it up there for use. So what we're really trying to get at with all of these new objectives, strategic plans, is to get a little more focused plan at this site specifically. It's a large site. It's got a lot of beneficial use area. So we want to take a deep dive into it and make sure we're utilizing it most efficiently. We issued an RFP to several consultants, and we included a range of scope of items in that RFP. Basically, we wanted to look at how are we storing materials? Where are we parking our vehicles? Is this the most efficient way to get pipe off of racks that are over there when your big equipment's over there? What about all our smaller inventory that we need to get to more frequently? Could it be in the farthest back corner? So we're looking at all those things. We also have trash pickup issues or concerns. So we're trying to address all of these things from a logistical standpoint that really have just been thrown together throughout the years through different administrations kind of coming up with solutions. So ultimately, the RFP went to 5 pretty well-known, well-qualified consulting firms that have local work experience that we've worked with in the past. All 5 contractors attended the mandatory pre-proposal meeting where we did go visit the site. They were able to take pictures, get a little more information on the background and how we get started with that. One consultant didn't plan to propose, that they just felt that this was not their wheelhouse and they wanted to offer their services or didn't want to offer their services in this realm. So ultimately, staff received 4 proposals. We ranked our scoring on the team's approach, the team itself and their experience, their schedule to perform this study, and their overall level of effort. So based on the quality of the proposals, as indicated by the score column in the staff paper, Tetra Tech did score the highest in terms of grading the proposals. Now you'll see on the fees, there was a variety there. There was a high and a low and 2 kind of highs and then a mid range. So when staff looked at that from a qualitative and what value are you getting for your dollar amount and cost per hours, we were able to kind of hone in on Tetra Tech being very fair value, considering the number of hours they proposed with what they were proposing in their approach overall. This project has been budgeted for $150,000. So the fiscal impact would be this project this study can be funded with the capital line item within the budget amount. The environmental impact, this is a study, so we do believe it's exempt as well. So the recommended action, staff recommends, the commission recommend to the board that the board approve the professional services contract with Tetra Tech, the amount of $82,000 for the El Moro site planning study, and find the project categorically exempt.
Can I just add something too? Because you're talking about the different uses up there. I think there were 2 uses that are key also that we didn't mention. It was like the fleet electrification and the possibility of locating new fleet out there. And then there's the possibility of maybe another EOP or training room that we think might be useful out there. And how would we fit that in if we were going to do something like that? So those are 2 other uses that we wanted them to take a look at.
And is that needed? Like, that extra,
Yes, for a number of reasons. Yeah, I think from an EOP standpoint, if anything were to happen downtown and this building has certain risks here, you would need a separate facility that you can gather to actually then run your emergency operations. Secondly, with the CMMS, we are moving a lot of our inventory in that direction up there, and there, I believe, will hopefully be an opportunity where we'll have somebody help put together work packages and manage the inventory. So they need a space up there to kind of work out of, which I would think you would need restrooms. There's no restrooms there. But this room could operate as kind of that space where you could do that. I think from a training perspective too, and even talking with the city, they're interested in the possibility of having another facility, or could also use a backup EOP for the city too. If something were to happen, they don't have that backup yet. I know they're looking at some options.
I was going to ask, like, isn't the city kind of asking for more space because they lost, a lot of the space when the kind of the expansion of the parking structure across from the pageant went in. So the cops kind of lost their.
Well, I don't think we're looking at any city needs per se, other than possibly this. But again, this study isn't necessarily to move forward with any of that. These are possibilities. And so if we're going to do it, how would we do it? To still justify going forward, your question would be valid and have to be answered at that point in time is this worthwhile spending the money on this? Or is this something we can just say, let's just take into account if we ever need to, let's not put something there and say that in the future, if there becomes a need. So it's really kind of just to have a plan really as to, as Bobby said, over the years, just been kind of willy-nilly, okay, let's start using it for this over there, or that for that over there.
Right.
Eventually, we're going to be stepping on each other's toes because this is an underutilized site. We can do so much more there. And the real
potential is amazing.
And the photovoltaic that we talked about, that's another area. So, and perhaps the city too has at some point the idea that they want to come to us. It'd be nice to say, well, that space we've kind of looked at as we're going to be using it for this. So not sure we want to do whatever you're asking. It helps kind of defend that we at least know what we're doing and managing what we have.
See it as moving from hodgepodge to a plan.
Yeah,
it just exactly. But so, again, the rookie, sorry. So we pay Tetra Tech 82 grand, and the city decides that they could use part of it for their kind of police overflow. Does the city then kind of end up reimbursing?
The city doesn't have that authority. They would have to work with the district to get an approval to do something on our facility if that's what they would like.
It's our dirt.
Yeah, it's our dirt. Yeah.
It's our dirt.
It's our dirt. Not the city's dirt.
I just needed to hear that.
That was it. Okay,
Yeah,
that
that
answers.
was kind of,
Yeah, it's our dirt.
all right, that's cool. So I approve it.
Other.
But isn't this sort of the strategic intent project is to start utilizing those kinds of that facility to get a lot of the stuff that really doesn't belong in downtown out of here.
The fuel is going to be up there.
In terms of best use, this is like the best place for gas.
That's right.
Probably rent the space out in the back and put a parking lot down there. They don't get a lot of money.
You're right on. And I think from the gas that
It's not right.
we've already figured out, I think, a solution for the gas, and the diesel will still be out there though.
Yeah.
So that does need to be accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly looking at our fleet, yeah. And, especially the fuel source may not be diesel or gas
Yeah.
anymore, right?
So
So
it might not.
So the charging station will be
Charging
up there and
station.
everything else.
Because this is just super high end real estate to have a maintenance structure.
It is, but I guess I can't really say yet whether or not it's cost effective to have a day-to-day fleet out of there either. So I think we're gonna have to look at that. You may have vehicles that are larger that aren't used as much, but you still have operations staff coming here every day. So you're still gonna have that need to have them start and end their day here. But those are absolutely the things we want to look at is what are those options and how do we run that?
So we're paying Tetra Tech
Yes.
82 grand. And we're going to say, put all of these options, all of these plans together so we can have an awesome plan.
Give us a master plan. That's what we get out of this. Yes.
In combination with CMMS.
It absolutely informs.
Right,
Where we
because
want to
we
go
could
with that.
kind of circle back to that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's actually cool.
Yeah, I like plans.
I like plans too. I like the options. I like having somebody who's smart, figure out a bunch of plans. So
Any additional comments?
I like the fact that this was done. I don't know what your scoring criteria are as far as your categories and if the firms know those ahead of time, but I appreciate the evaluation, not just based on the lowest fee, that there's the best value and quality-based selection, things like that. I mean, I think quality-based selection has its place. This is a good place for it. If quality-based selection says both firms are equal, I could go with either one and one's half price, then you would be responsible to do the half price one. But in this case, I think if you're feeling like you're getting a lot more for your money, then I applaud this kind of selection process rather than just professional service model. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
I was gonna say the same thing. That's right. Good job, Bobby. Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
I'll move the recommend that.
I'll second.
yeah, I actually like it that you didn't choose the local one. You know,
yeah?
somebody who came in like totally objective and, you know,
No, we had Bobby put together a very good scoring system and yeah, we spent a lot of time objectively choosing who we think is the highest value. So, yeah.
Any public comments?
No.
Okay, there was a motion, Mark made it. Is that right?
I did.
I think. Or you have more comment?
I'll make first or second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll go to the wireless AT&T request. New gen.
Speaking of licensed communication facility, at our Ridge Reservoir, Singular Wireless AT&T, we'll call them AT&T. They are currently at our Ridge site. They're requesting to install a new generator at the site, and I put the particulars within the staff report. And that new generator would integrate with the existing AT&T equipment. In order to put in that new generator, they would need to do some trenching to get the underground power cables. And it's not finalized yet how many linear feet, but we are looking at about 100 to 200 of underground utility cables. Kevin, our manager, pardon me?
It's hundreds.
100 to 200, yeah, yes.
200 feet, okay, trenching,
Pardon me?
200 feet of trenching then?
100 to 200 linear feet, yeah.
Wait, where are we talking about?
At our Ridge Reservoir,
Oh,
which is up in Laguna Canyon.
yeah, said that. Yeah.
Kevin, our manager of operations, has reviewed the scope of work, the drawings and the plans, and preliminarily has indicated that the proposed work would not interfere with the district operations at the site, with the exception that Kevin is mandating that the generator is no less than 10 feet away from our edge of our tank. If the commission and the board conceptually approve this request, then we would require final plans to be drawn up, specifically identifying exactly how many linear feet of trenching they would need. It would go back to Kevin for review. If he is okay, he'll sign up on the plans, make sure it doesn't interfere with any of our operations at the site. And then we would move forward with drafting an amendment to our current license agreement. Again, because it's a current license agreement, we can't change all the terms and conditions, but it would increase the ground space requirement of AT&T, which would then trigger a monetary term to that amendment that we would bring forward to the commission and the board for consideration.
So much per foot.
Okay. Like most of these requests, they are categorically exempt from CEQA. So our recommendations are that the commission conceptually approve AT&T's generator install and trenching request at Ridge, and that the commission recommend to the board to conceptually approve the request at its September 28th, 2023 meeting. Any questions?
Questions?
And the conceptually means any, but they have to come back again with the amendment and whatever additional revenue opportunities are there.
Correct.
This is just the concept.
This is what the commission has asked staff to have the process be going forward, is conceptually look at the plans, say, yeah, in concept, we are okay with this, or we're not okay. Now we want the final plans. We want staff to approve those final plans, or review and consider. And if approval, then we go to the legal agreement terms and conditions and bring them back to you to say, okay, this is the final. And are you okay with this?
And this goes to what Mark was saying earlier. So I think most of the time it's because of more the visual impact. This isn't necessarily that, but they do, when we brought the last conceptual board, I had a mock-up that you could see. And that's really, I think, what the conceptual is really, that's the sweet spot. That's why we do that, is that most of the time it's a visual impact issue. And so if the board ultimately does not like the visual impacts, they're not going to like it conceptually, and just stop it right there. So that just to kind of explain why that's the case.
Is there anything we need up there? Like a better camera, a better automated gate? You know, and what's the reason? Well, they got this new expensive generator there. We're like, you know, we're worried somebody's going to go steal it and it's going to impact our, you know, our property. It was just got to be in anyway, something.
I would think
It's one of my high fives.
in concept, I'd like to address that, is that with new license agreements, we are asking the carriers to do more than just pay rent. Because of that, because of that issue, not only with security fencing, but also with the landscaping and potential fire hazard.
Right.
That's the very expensive equipment for them, so they should share in the cost of that. So any new agreement, we are incorporating those types of terms in those, and we will continue.
Maybe we're going to do the plan and just put the ball in their court and say, hey, what are you going to do about better cameras, you know, gates that are more secure,
Fire security.
blah, blah, blah. Just not like we're asking, telling them we want something, just say, what are you guys going to do about the things that you need? I don't know what you need up there. There's got to be something. You know, you can, doesn't hurt to ask. Sure.
Not only that, price per foot, maybe.
Yeah, you know, that's the guy.
Yeah, we'll work with legal on and seeing what we could potentially ask.
Nothing worse than
Well,
commissioner
Walter's
opinion
approach.
that they know when there's
Exactly.
actually a guy at the table who's actually.
What do you guys, what is your plan for fire protection for your new
We do want
equipment?
to put a hill hydrant at that site, so maybe we can pay for that $150,000.
They agreed.
Yeah, why not? We can ask,
We can ask.
contribute.
Not bad.
I mean, divided by 15 years, for goodness sakes, right? It's nothing for them.
Fire.
That's well said.
That's all it takes.
It's not.
Any other additional questions, comments?
No.
Is there a public comment?
No.
So I'll move the recommended action.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Another one for Bobby. 4.13.
Okay, so this one is covering our annual fire hydrant replacement program. Again, the district, to kind of catch some folks up to speed, district has regularly invested in fire hydrants, especially for replacement. The process by which we identify which fire hydrants are in need of replacement, we look at the hydrant's age, whether we can still get parts and materials to replace any of the inner workings of the hydrants. We also look at the number of ports that the hydrants currently have and whether we need to upsize that. We have worked with the fire marshal in the past to identify areas of their concern for spacing of fire hydrants. So with all those factors in mind, staff works together to come up with a list of fire hydrants ready for replacement. And that are on this year's slate. So this year's project includes 7 hydrant sites, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. But the low hanging fruit, so to speak, the hydrants that were already easy to get to have already been taken care of. They've already been replaced with the standard hydrant barrels that we have. So now we're getting into areas of town that are more difficult from an accessibility standpoint for a contractor to do work. And we're getting to hydrants that a typical hydrant has a 6-inch diameter pipe that is the supply line off of the main. Some of these hydrants have been due to age or due to when they were installed, only have a 4-inch supply line, if you will. So now we're getting into less hydrant body and more of the supply piping to it. So specifically on one of these sites, there's about 160 feet of undersized main line 4-inch that will be replaced to increase the available fire flow. This meets several objectives, again, with the strategic plan and ongoing wildfire mitigation programs as well. So again, just how this program works, staff develops plans in-house. Once we have the list, as operations goes through all the hydrants and performs their regular maintenance activities, we identify these hydrants. We design the plans in-house, we send them out to bid. We have our basically our district's approved construction contractors list, known contractors we've worked with and have been very successful with in the past. So we sent the plans to them. We had the mandatory pre-bid meeting, and 3 of the bidders showed up. 1 was not able to attend just due to staffing shortages. And so the 3 bids that we received are presented in a paper. Again, staff reviews all the bids for cost competitiveness, and this was a very tight bid. Basically $2,000 differential between the 2 low bids, which just makes us feel very confident in that design and that plan. Now, maybe not so confident on the budgeted numbers, which I know we'll get questions on, but the overall bid, the overall process itself, we do feel confident with. Contractor also reviewed the standard construction contract and have no objections. So with that, we would recommend that districts would move forward with Fryhoe Brothers. The fiscal impact, however, we should talk about a little bit. So the budgeted amount, again, the budget was being March of last year's earlier projection was for $400,000. At that point, we just have a list. We don't know the details and all the intricacies of what is getting upgraded at that point. They're still developing plans. That typically has been just a general number that we've used throughout the years. But it's a deficiency when considering the bids that came in. So staff's recommending a budget adjustment amount of $200,000 to cover this deficiency. We recommend reallocating the $200,000 from the valve replacement project. Why we selected the valve replacement project is because, again, that is another function of as operations goes through and maintains the system and identifies valves that are used for isolation purposes on system shutdowns that are deficient. There's 9 times out of 10 another valve that can be utilized for shutdown purposes. So there's always a backup to the backup for valves. They are very critical. We absolutely need every valve to work, but we do have backups when certain valves don't go down, which just makes the shutdown larger. So by utilizing funds from that budgeted item, we are really taking care of some valves that are included with these fire hydrants as well. So we saw kind of a nexus, if you will, of valves and hydrants that, again, we budgeted an overall number or 2 different numbers, but really we're taking care of district deficiencies in place. That's where staff has recommended $200,000 come from there to make the overall budgeted number $600,000. The valve budget would go down to $250,000. Again, the environmental compliance, we believe this is a class 2 exemption for CEQA, which is basically repair, operation, and minor alteration of existing public structure. And so we've used that exemption before. So the recommended action would be approve the budget adjustment, or recommend the commissioner, recommend the board approve the budget adjustment of $200,000 from the valve project. And then approve a construction contract with Fryhoe Brothers for $545 or $95 and authorize the GM for the additional expenditure of 10% and then find the project categorically as elements. That will open to questions.
So if it, I'm sorry. Well, you're seeing it.
No, go ahead.
So right now, these hydrants are 4 inches. And
Some of them are.
some of them are, but they should be 6 inches. So how far back do you have to go to make it 6 inches?
It's a case by case scenario. And again, the one case was 160 feet. So it's part of the main now that needs to be upsized as well.
So that's part of the scope of work.
Yes,
That
yeah,
you will 6 inches all the way.
correct. Yep.
So everything that you're gonna do will bring it up to code, like at 6 inches.
It will increase the fire flow. Yes, yeah.
All right.
So thanks for your explanation. I kind of took Bobby off to the comment I'm gonna have. It's gonna be fiscally related, of course. So I think it's great. I applaud the upsizing the supply line to 6 inch. That's appropriate to feed hydrants. So that's a good thing. So I like the project overall. The comment about, 400,000 has kind of been the number we've used. So if that's something that needs to be looked at going forward, then we need to look at that. We need to look at it in the context of everything else as well. We don't just, oh, now in $600, let's just keep increasing everything like that. So that's a comment there for the next thing to look at, or we need to reevaluate the scope of the project and make sure that it stays by the budget. And then for this year's valve replacement project, assuming there's going to be a valve replacement project, I would not be warm and fuzzy to see a valve replacement project come in at 450,000, and now we need to amend another budget because we just took it from here. So I understand the nexus and I really appreciate that comment. So that's great. And if we're able to do that, these two kind of complement each other. It's all good. So that would be my, take it, and then we're just going to keep borrowing from other projects and doing things.
And on that comment too, I think what we look at is we're gonna limit it to 200,000. I mean, but does that mean we're following behind on our valve? So when we go through the next budget cycle, that's when we would look at and say, okay, based on what we saw this year, are we budgeting enough for hydrants so we don't have to do it again? And what's the new number for valves? Now, I mean, we need to catch up, but I mean, right now we try to make it so that our CIP as a whole doesn't increase because our rates are set on that. So we're really cognizant of, we got to keep it within that number. And unfortunately, these came in higher for reasons that, we're getting into more difficult hydrants and things are getting more expensive because of that. But your point is valid, that I do think that we next year, considering that is the case, are we budgeting enough for hydrants? And then what are we going to do to make up for the fact that we may be falling behind our valves now?
The easy ones are gone.
Then what are those dominoes?
Yeah.
And where are those
I don't want to fall behind on that. Yeah.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But then,
Okay. Thank you.
Well, plus you're still at risk. I don't know where you're digging, but 160 feet or 200 feet in Laguna Beach is not without risk.
You had to say
Everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
Around here, you start digging, all bets are off. So it wouldn't surprise me.
It's
you can argue it all you want.
Yeah, it
Sounds
was,
like another quagmire corner.
Yeah, there's gonna be another.
there's nothing you can do about it.
It is what it is.
That's definitely what it is.
Surgeons.
A lot of hell.
Well, at least they were smart enough to know and look at it and go, wait a minute, this could be so it's a lot of money for just a few hydrants, but because of probably one outlier.
That's exactly right. Well, and I think Mark basically touched on what I was gonna say. What about those poor valves out there? I want to make sure that they're not forgotten. But I think, and my comment was going to be sure that as we go into the next budget cycle, that there's enough for that. But I do really like the approach that as you guys are out in the field, it's not just, it had been forever a plug number. And now you guys are really evaluating our system and the aging infrastructure and where the focus needs to be. And I think that's absolutely the right approach. And if it means more money, it means more money. And I think that's what we need to do.
You guys, that's part of your risk development works here now. You just assess all of these valves and not
The risk and resiliency looked at each zone and redundancies. And so I think we don't get down to the discrete valve by valve, but we do know which critical facilities exist. There are certain unique facilities. But we know with valves, as Bobby pointed out, most valves, there's a redundancy. What the impact is that you may spend more time and impact more customers because you're having to shut down in a larger area and turn more valves. But we will get it shut down. And you just don't have as tight of a management, if you will. And it's certainly something you don't want to fall behind on because you want to have that tight management.
Additional
With
comment?
that, I move approval.
Second,
Now, second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Oh.
Oh, public.
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 They vote.
But
They vote.
Hey,
We had to do public comment before the vote. So now.
yeah, now we have to do the vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Yeah, that's
Stupid.
It's a long.
Yeah. Item 4.14,
Let's talk about another.
another go around with the.
We have, the district has several agreements with truly nonprofit organizations such as Orange County Sheriff's Department, Orange County Fire Authority, but also Saddleback College, KSBR Radio has an existing antenna and equipment at our Alta Laguna Reservoir. They have approached us to install a new tower, replacing an older one, replacing some antennas and modifying some existing equipment as part of all of this project. So they are asking to remove existing antennas and a coax cable from an existing pole that is owned by other carriers or tower companies, remove an existing transmitter from a wall-mounted shelf inside an existing on-site building, but also to install a new antenna on a new pole, which above ground level would be about 25 feet in height, and install outdoor equipment enclosure to accommodate a new transmitter, which all of this would mean that it would be requiring a larger footprint at the site. But again, because they are a nonprofit organization, it has been the history of the district to enter into very nominal rental agreements with these entities. So nominal that is $5 per every 5-year term, which is quite different than what we charge the for-profit carriers and tower companies. The district's manager of operations has reviewed KSBR's proposed scope of work and the plans and the simulated photos, which are attached to this or included with this packet, and has determined preliminarily that the proposed modifications would not interfere with district operations. Similar to our past application request, we would ask for final plans. Kevin then would look at those again and make that final determination whether or not they would interfere with our operations. That's obviously the most important thing when we enter into these agreements. Because it would be a new tower, new pole, we do look at the visual impact. From some of the perspectives on the photo ops, it looks like the new equipment would be taller than what's there, but it's not. Based on the exact height, it is not going to be anything that will be above what's already existing at the site with some other towers or antenna towers that are there. So some of the photos that, as I mentioned, I did put in here. The biggest visual impact would be that new antenna, which you can see on page 182 of the agenda packet, as well as 183. So that antenna would be something that'd be new, but Alta Laguna, I don't believe there's a lot of residents around it. I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with that site to where people would be that or
Does at the end.
at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be a consideration. But again, that pole is no taller than what is existing there now. So that is a consideration. Should the commission and board conceptually approve to move forward with these modifications, then we would look at and work with our consultant as well as with legal counsel to determine, do we need a new license agreement because there are some, big changes here, or can we add an amendment to the existing agreement? So that would be something that we would work on going forward. Obviously bring that document back to you for consideration.
That brings up a question. Would the new licensing agreement that you're putting together apply to not just paying customers, but also to nonprofit?
Yeah.
It could. I mean, it could, or,
Absolutely.
but it was not written with this in mind.
No,
The terms would be
right. I think
except for the
certainly
payment part.
correct. Yeah. The other parts where restricting access, things like that, I want to make sure that we have that
Yeah.
in our new document at some point, because I don't know, this is a much older agreement
Right.
that I
Saw
don't.
Bruce's name.
Right. Right, exactly. So those are considerations.
This is still just the concept.
This concept.
Right.
Yes.
So simple question. So it's aesthetically, ultimately, there won't be a difference.
Well, there will be a difference, Commissioner Meberg, in terms of that new antenna that's on that pole. The new pole will not be any higher than the existing poles that are there, but that antenna would be new.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
And so from a distance, like on page 182, that street view, you can tell there's a new antenna. Is it so gross, so to speak, to warrant not moving forward? That's a determination the commission and the board have to make.
Come on.
Real quick, so the difference between the existing picture and the proposed picture, what's the pitchfork looking thing?
Yeah. What is that pitchfork thing?
That's.
On page 181, it
No, but why does it not show up in the existing one? Because it kind of.
does show up in the existing, it's whited out.
Write it out.
Oh.
The page 182 is just a better, clearer picture. I think too, because this is a photo simulation on page 182. KSBR probably marked up that the existing pole to make it easier to see there.
It's already there.
It is already there, yes.
Looks like a little bit of a modified field goal.
I think
It makes it look like
Goalpost.
something else is going in.
It's something.
I think the picture on
Here.
page 181, it looks like there might be some glare coming off of that
Oh,
antenna, so that it looks more.
Probably has a picture of it. It's white right now. It looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe in 182, they marked it up to make it
Right.
look.
Maybe in the middle of goalpost, just.
Okay. That was my only question. It just looked like.
To make it look less than what it is.
Halloween decorations.
Yeah.
Because it's also not just the height, but it's also the number
Or the XFL would try.
of the residents. Yeah.
Any other comments? Questions?
Another one, I'm always looking for. So can we like get some pre-advertisement? Like,
Water conservation.
in partner with, we're gonna be water, I mean, at some point in time, I
PSAs?
we kind of go forward a little bit, we might need a little bit of press for DSAL, or whatever. You know, sort of we're partnering with you guys, it's all free, we want, 10 segments a month. And to get recognition, and it's possible for promotion of DSAL, costing the money to them. And it's kind of gets us locked up with the school. And maybe your cool idea about podcasting, somehow you can wrap all this together and just say, hey, we're giving you all this for free, but we want some airtime and not at 2 o'clock in the morning. As just an idea.
Content.
That's a good idea.
Prime time, something.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We will put that in there.
Put that in there.
Yeah, that actually is smart because down the road, gonna need a little PR.
Plus you can have fun.
Okay.
Well, PR is fun.
Yeah.
It is fun. I mean, so we can look at this as potentially negative or positive? So it's positive for anybody that lives around there. This is a great idea. This is awesome. So it might initially not look so great, but it's going to be better. For
He's
all
stuck
the
it in there at
citizens.
night, nobody would know.
Probably not, but
But we
I,
have to, you know,
but I guarantee you somebody will say something.
so always.
Yeah, but on this picture, so when I look at this picture, so it's the fact that, so the building is here then where, around where this fence is, where the green of the fence, is that the building that we're seeing in this picture?
This one.
Yeah.
So the building is gonna be-
So
Buildings on the opposite side.
Yeah.
on the opposite side?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's, oh, okay.
So I'm not sure what the street is behind this.
Yeah, so I was wondering what, yeah, that street is,
Where's this? Turn the
You know where I'm looking?
that's,
Yeah,
that's a residential street on the other side.
And I believe that this houses sit lower.
Yeah, they just sit lower
And what's the name thing, the.
on that.
Something through a tree, the
Yeah,
building.
let's visualize it. Yeah, I'll draw that there, but,
And you're looking like this.
just saying this, the good news about this site, you guys have a lot of trees around there. I'm just thinking that, you know, in the future, there's a possibility adding any foliage on that side. Doesn't look like there is, and I'm just thinking out loud, sorry. I support this as well. It just,
Any additional
For
comment?
a for-profit carrier, we would be asking for the moon on something like this.
I know. 'cause
So
it's-
we're dealing with Saddleback College. That's a little,
I know,
I think Walter's idea is brilliant.
but again, this is
Get
constant.
something out of
That's that. Yeah, it's
it
great.
somehow. Or-
but yeah, we'll,
Yeah.
I knew the concept,
So-
yeah.
No, like people at Saddleback that,
I don't have any great relationships with Saddleback directly, but I think I think you won't have a problem.
I think
I think they would be happy to help us out.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Any additional comments? There are motion, any public comment?
Approval.
There a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
4.15.
Last item for consideration. Let's do this. All right, this one, we brought in the past. So again, to catch everybody up to speed real quick. So again, in June 2021, we came and requested outside assistance in certain faculties. One such area was as needed construction contracts. That's a separate issue. This is for as needed on-call electrical SCADA system services. We've executed these agreements in the past. We only had 2 vendors on our first SOQ RFP, if you will. So now we're looking at adding a third. We've sent the same RFP statement of qualifications. They presented it to us. Staff reviewed it. It meets with favorable conditions compared to the other 2. They provide similar line of work. It just diversifies who we can use. Again, these contracts are for when staff we don't have enough time or staff has the expertise to do these extra bits of work. We have these on-call contracts to be able to call in staff. They may or may not be used. They are budgeted as a $100,000 item, or sorry, they are written. The contract is a $100,000 contract. I think on the history of 2 of them, well, we only had 2. So one we didn't use last year and the other we used a little bit of. So it's just to add a little more diversity in terms of adding a third consultant that we have a good relationship that we're building with. So again, fiscal impact, this now is actually being budgeted in our throughout our budget process. There's a full amount is not guaranteed, may end up having no expenditures, but the amount that's budgeted is capital line item in the budget. The environmental impact, this is just, it's an on-call nature of the work. So it's going to be for maintenance and repair and things that we can't get to as a staff. So we believe that's exempt. Again, the recommendations for commission to recommend the board approve the contract with Mitra Automation. The amount not to exceed $100,000, no guarantee for as needed electrical SCADA services with options to renewal up to 2 years, but mutual agreement, find project categorically exempt.
it's a contractor, not a consultant, right?
Correct. Yeah, this is a contract.
So this is just adding a third on-call contractor. Yeah, no brainer. Approved.
Is it T and M? Materials contracts or how are these things?
We've kind of done, yeah, task order. We've asked for proposal for upfront. It depends on the type of work and how big it is. I mean, to get a proposal on something kind of small, I think we've operated on.
Yeah, we've done it both ways.
Yeah. They're kind of open in that regard.
Yeah, but you guys are gonna double check what they're charging.
It's
But
their
you just
approved.
need to know that there's a contract in place. You have a third company that you can call.
Correct. And they have to, they submitted a rate sheet, so their rate's already set. So yeah.
Right, yeah.
Did the first two, remember this is the first time we did this was 2 years ago.
Correct. Yeah.
Did they all have 2-year renewals?
They did. Yes.
Did they renew?
He did.
Hmm.
Yeah, technically, yeah, so
So it was a mutual.
it was a mutual, correct.
Mutual that let's move forward, so it's worked. So that they did renew, they didn't say, "Hey, we don't like this deal." And you didn't say, "We don't like these people." So, okay. Yes, Mark.
Just a question on fiscal, so I know it's typically my theme for the night, right?
Yeah.
So it says this amount is budgeted as a capital line item in the 23-24 budget, so there's gonna be 3 of these. 100,000, I look at the budget, the line item says 200,000, so are all 3 under the 200,000?
The 200,000 is the controlling number from what we can expend.
Okay,
The 100,000 is the max you can spend with any one contractor.
okay, but we can't do 100,000 for all 3, because
No, we don't have enough budget for that.
Yes. That was my question.
And what happens to the money that's not spent? Rolls over?
Yep.
Those fire hydrant.
What's the valves?
Unappropriated, and then we could reappropriate following year.
So, right. So we have that, it technically it goes in the fund balance or
Yeah.
reserves, and then you start doing the budget cycle.
Any others? Any public comment?
No colors.
Move approval.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, that's the action items. So reports.
One report, the water capacity fee, which we're required by the government code to do annually, is to report on the water capacity fees collected for the prior fiscal year and what we've spent those monies on. And we are also required to post this report on our website for public inspection. So that's what we're doing. In the report, I've listed what the code requires for our reporting, and I've attached that report to the staff report. And for FY 22-23, we collected $293,570 worth of water capacity fees. And we transferred all of those funds to our capital improvement projects. Water capacity fees truly are the district's only designated or restricted funds that are generated. And in the report, we've identified that we expended those capacity fees on the Laguna Canyon Frontage Road Pipeline, which is technically a capacity providing project. And that represented 61.2% of the total project expended on that pipeline. We also have to identify what we anticipate to spend next year's or FY 24's capacity fees on. And we've identified the Glomstead pipeline replacement as that project to spend future FY 24 capacity fees. So with that, if there are any questions?
I'm new. So what's Guam's road?
Glomstead pipeline replacement. I will turn that over to manager engineering.
Is that pipeline?
To keep it brief, pipeline Bromstead Lane.
I don't know.
Yeah, I went Terrace. Park Avenue, turn right.
By the high school.
By the high school.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So then we're kind of working on that area, that pipeline.
Well, that will be determined, in the project
The budget's next year.
In budget.
Yeah, it's been.
It's in the budget. If for some reason we don't move forward with that project, we will use a capacity piece on another asset that we do move forward with.
And is that pipeline like really crappy?
What is the reason behind the replacement?
Technically, yes, it's crabby. It is underneath, it's in a very high risk situation scenario, and there have been a history of leaks and breaks, repairs on it. It's all in a private, so that Golmsted is a private drive that we have an easement over. So we've identified this pipeline as a necessary improvement.
Now I know. When we talk about it, I'll be like, I won't have to go. Huh?
Yeah, well, there'll be plenty of other ones out there too.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Thank you, Brian.
Bobby? Right, the Engineering and Operations Committee report is included in the packet. Just highlight a couple of projects in there. We did complete the hydrant replacement, last year's hydrant replacements. So that came in with a couple change orders, but overall within budget, that's good. And there's photos there. Ordered some trucks that came in as well. So those photos in there. And then the last little exhibit is the kind of overall our roadmap of moving forward with all our capital projects, which was discussed at the committee. Keep that open for questions.
Well, I just want to say the committee that you guys have moved a lot of projects through this year, and I'm, we should be very, very proud. You guys are just rocking and rolling. So that's my comment. I think it's, and you just, I love the way you go through and you present the budget and this year's budget, and if it's going to be more than 1 year, and the way you're executing, you guys are really doing a good job.
Thank you.
That was really efficient. First meeting, like, oh, look at these guys go. The agenda, I'm like, good Lord, I'm gonna be here till
I
midnight.
love the pictures. Keep the pictures coming.
We're not done yet.
We're not.
I know, but still.
Christopher?
Few items. I've got my risk and resiliency report, my water use efficiency report, and customer service report are all attached for your review. Just as I always do, I want to point out a couple of things with the water use efficiency. You'll see on the report that in August, 93% of our customers stayed within tier 1, and only 7% were were in tier 2. Great for water use efficiency, not so good for budget and our water use efficiency program costs because we're getting less money. It also wanted to point out that water usage for August, we were 23% less than we were 10 years ago in 2013, and 18%, they use 18% less than they did in 2020. So we are still seeing that we're not bouncing back. Now, the drought's over and messaging is out, but the drought's over. We're not bouncing back. We're not seeing an increase in water usage. So that's
New reports look great, by the way. They are, I think they're easier to read.
So that's a testament to our customers and our outreach program, and a lot of the things that we put into place during the drought, such as having people pull landscaping out,